Chapter 4047. Xie Tianquang's face was confident, and his eyes were filled with excitement. He looked like he would fight Qi Xinu to the death. Don't be impatient. There's no need to clash with him right now. Nie Tian was calm and signaled Xie Tianquang not to be impulsive. This was the hidden dragon battle, after all. It was not advisable to clash with Qi Xinu. After all, Qi Xinu was a member of the Angel Clan. If Nie Tian and the others made a move, the other Angel Clan warriors would probably join the fight as well, which would cause chaos. Nie Tian did not want to kill Qi Xinu. He only wanted to know who the person who placed the blood corpse curse on Nie Yuro was. Qi Xinu most likely knew the method to revive Ni Jiaming. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, Nie Tian would not kill Qi Xinu. All right, we'll let that brat jump around for a while. Xie Tianquang laughed wildly. His eyes were filled with sharpness. Nie Tian glanced at Xie Tianquang and couldn't help but smile. This guy was very confident. However, in Nie Tian's opinion, Xie Tianquang might not be Qi Xinu's match. At least, he could not defeat Qi Xinu without using the Thunder Ape. A moment later, a group of figures appeared in the sky. It was Heavenly Law Marshal House's Zhou Yu. He had arrived with the judges of the Hidden Dragon Battle. Everyone! Zhou Yu's voice rang out. A dignified aura surged out, and the chaotic crowd immediately quieted down. Next up is the second stage of the Hidden Dragon Battle, the Elimination Round. Zhou Yu's eyes flashed like lightning as he swept over the audience and solemnly said, "The first stage has already divided the winners group and the losers group. In the Elimination Round, the two groups of martial artists will fight 64 battles against the martial artists in their group, with each group winning one battle. Each group will win one match and have no points for a loss or a draw. After 64 matches, the top 1,000 of the winners group will advance, and the rest will be eliminated. The top 200 of the losers group will advance, and the rest will be eliminated." Everyone stared at Zhou Yu, their eyes trembling and their faces filled with nervousness. The first stage of the battle was at most a warm-up. Even if one was unlucky and met a strong opponent, they would not be eliminated. However, the second stage was different. If one score was too low, it would mean that they would be eliminated. The 5 great academies were the holy lands of martial arts in the hearts of warriors. Everyone had risked their lives to get to where they were, all for the sake of entering the 5 great academies. If they were eliminated in the Hidden Dragon competition, it would be a real pity. Everyone, don't be too nervous. Even if you're eliminated in the Elimination Round, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to enter the 5 great academies. As long as your performance is good enough, you'll still have a chance, Zhou Yu said with a smile. That's right, the 5 academies had recruited a total of about 8,000 people this time. However, only a little more than 1,000 people could advance in the second stage. Therefore, there was still a small number of martial artists who had been eliminated. They could still enter the 5 academies, but the premise was that their performance was outstanding enough. Everyone's eyes were blazing, as if they were all hoping to win Zhou Yu's favor. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly realized that the referees behind Zhou Yu were not the same referees as before. Instead, they were martial artists who looked older and stronger. It seemed like they were the teachers of the 5 great academies. Everyone, the people standing behind, right now, are the teachers of the 5 great academies. They will be the judges of the Elimination Round. Zhou Yu's gaze swept across the crowd as he continued. Furthermore, every single one of them will have a spot in their hands. As long as your performance is good enough and you are recognized by them, they will let you enter the 5 great academies directly. That's great. Everyone's eyes were shaking as their expressions became heated. The way they looked at the referees had changed. It was now filled with respect and admiration. Interesting. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he smiled faintly. This is just a trick that the disciples from the noble families use. However, Qi Chunfeng, who was standing next to him, forced a smile and said with dissatisfaction, "What do you mean?" Nie Tian was dazed for a second, not understanding. Qi Chunfeng's lips twitched as he said, "The spots in these people's hands seem to be fair, but in reality, most of them have already been reserved by the big clans. Some of the disciples from the noble families are not talented enough or powerful enough, but the forces behind them are powerful enough to buy the referees in advance. It's equivalent to entering the 5 great academies in advance. So that's how it is, Nyetian said, frowning. So there was such a trick behind the seemingly fair selection. The spots in the hands of these referees had already been bought by others. Nyetian was still too young to see through the profound meaning behind it. But it doesn't matter. Lord Nyetian is so powerful that he can still enter the 5 great academies, even if there's something fishy going on. Chi Chenfeng looked at Nyetian and said with a smile. Nyetian smiled and did not say anything else. In fact, Chi Chenfeng's strength was considered the strongest among all the participants. However, he might not be able to enter the 5 great academies because he was from a low-level sacred world. Not to mention other warriors. Even his own clan members looked down on him. Then, Zhou Yu announced the start of the elimination round. Nyetian was still number 208. All he needed to do now was to wait for the battles to begin. After the battles began, the 500 arenas in the sky were quickly filled with warriors. Exciting battles were staged one after another. Nyetian's eyes were like lightning. He quickly filtered out the useless battles and focused on the quality battles. A moment later, his eyes were attracted by a sword user. This sword user stood coldly in the sky. He wore a white robe, and his body was like a sword. Sword energy surged around him, giving off a cold and sharp aura. This person's sword chi is giving me a very familiar feeling. Nyetian frowned and couldn't help but look at that person with a strange look in his eyes. It was very strange. This person's sword energy gave him a familiar feeling, but he was very sure that he had never seen this person before. Look, that guy is the sword genius of the Heaven Martial Group, Yu Jingchun. At this time, someone shouted from aside, Heaven Martial Group. Nyetian was stunned for a moment. His eyes couldn't help but become hot with astonishment. Of course, he was familiar with the Heaven Martial Group. It was one of the 5 forces behind the heart of the sky. Its leader was the 8th star messenger, the divine heaven ancestor, Scarlet Life, Loyal Heart. He really didn't expect to meet a sword user from the Heaven Martial Group here. In the next moment, Nyetian suddenly realized something. His eyes became hot, and he shouted in surprise, I know. Chapter 4048. Nyetian had comprehended the sacred heaven-defying sword from the sacred heaven ancestors' tri-talent sacred formation. Yu Jingchun's sword energy was similar to Nyetian's sacred heaven-defying sword. Yu Jingchun was a member of the Heaven Martial Group, so he must have cultivated in the tri-talent sacred formation before. His sword energy was also related to the formation. It seemed that Yu Jingchun's relationship with the sacred heaven ancestor was not ordinary. He should be a disciple or a grand disciple. Who is this person? His sword energy is so strong. At this time, someone who didn't know Yu Jingchun frowned. You don't even know him? He is the sword prodigy Yu Jingchun who became famous on the Hidden Sky list in recent years. A swordsman looked at Yu Jingchun with passionate eyes and did not hide his admiration for the latter. He excitedly said, Yu Jingchun was not originally on the Hidden Sky list, but 3 years ago he suddenly rose to the top. In just 3 years, he directly squeezed into the top 10 of the Hidden Sky list and is currently ranked 9th. 9th. Hearing that person's words, Nyetian couldn't help but be shocked. Yu Jingchun didn't look old, and his strength was only at the 5th level of Heavenly Righteous. Yet, he was ranked 9th on the Hidden Sky list and was even above the Sacred Light martial intent. This was truly unbelievable. Is he that strong? Someone expressed his doubts and said, looking at him, he doesn't seem like much. What do you know? Another person was unhappy and growled. Although Yu Jingchun's martial cultivation is not high, his sword cultivation is extremely high. Even the Sacred Heaven Ancestor said that he is the #1 sword prodigy of the Heaven Martial Group in the last 1 million years. Nyetian's eyes trembled. He couldn't help but become excited, and his heart was filled with anticipation. He really wanted to see how strong this person, who was called the #1 sword prodigy by the Scarlet Life Sacred Heart Reverend, was kill. At this moment, the cultivator opposite Yu Jingchun let out a low roar. His figure moved like a wild beast, pressing down on Yu Jingchun. However, Yu Jingchun stood in the same place without moving at all. It was as if the opponent didn't exist. In the blink of an eye, that person was only a few dozen meters away from Yu Jingchun. Right at that moment, Yu Jingchun's figure suddenly moved, and he took a step forward. Instantly, a sharp sword chi shot out and streaked across the void. After that, a shrill cry sounded out, and then that person was directly sent flying. He retreated for thousands of meters, and his body was drenched in blood. That seemingly unremarkable sword chi actually chopped off that person's arm. When the crowd saw this, they could not help but gasp, and their eyes became dull. No one had expected that Yu Jingchun would be able to severely injure a martial artist of the same level with just his sword chi. What a terrifying sword chi! Yet Tian's heart skipped a beat when he saw this, and his eyes were filled with shock. Just now, he had not been able to sense Yu Jingchun's true realm, but he reckoned that Yu Jingchun was at least a sword tribulation swordsman, and he might even be a sword tribulation 9-stage sword tribulation swordsman. It was no wonder that his sword chi was so terrifying. It was really shocking. Yet Tian couldn't help but look at Yu Jingchun with a fervent gaze. He was actually a little excited. He began to look forward to fighting with Yu Jingchun. I've lost. At that moment, that defeated martial artist sighed helplessly. With Yu Jingchun's strength, it was already very kind of him to have only taken one of his arms. If it had been any other violent martial artist, he would have long been a corpse. Yu Jingchun's decision to injure his opponent but not kill him was considered wise. He wanted to tell his opponents not to provoke him easily. After all, for experts like them, the second stage of the elimination round was nothing. The real challenge was in the third and fourth stages. No one wanted to reveal too much of their strength in the second stage. So even if they did not kill him, they still wanted to give their opponents some warning, lest some people overestimate their strength and fight even though they knew they could not win. High up in the sky, Yu Jingchun took a step forward and left the arena. However, his eyes were focused on a silver-haired martial artist. It was Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes also trembled as he felt Yu Jingchun's gaze. Yu Jingchun seemed to have discovered something about Nie Tian, and he wanted to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. Next, Nie Tian continued to watch other battles. After a while, he welcomed his first battle. His opponent was a Qiani Stage 5 martial artist, and he defeated him in one move. Before he met a true expert, Nie Tian did not want to reveal his strength. He wanted to end the battle quickly. The second stage of the battles progressed quickly, and after 5 days, most of the martial artists had already fought more than 20 battles. Nie Tian had fought a total of 23 battles, and he had won all of them, earning him 23 points. He could not see his own ranking, but he estimated that he should be in the top 1,000. It was basically a matter of time before he entered the third stage. Arena 177, Hidden Dragon number 218 versus Hidden Dragon number 2045. At this moment, a deep voice rang out, causing Nie Tian's eyes to heat up. He was number 218, and he was about to welcome another victory. In the next instant, Nie Tian's body moved, and he stepped onto Arena 177. Almost at the same time, a sharp figure appeared, standing in the air like a sharp sword, and his aura was incomparably sharp. When Nie Tian saw the figure in front of him, he could not help but exclaim in surprise. He did not expect to meet the opponent he had been looking forward to so soon. Yu Jingchun, it's you. Yu Jingchun saw Nie Tian, and he was also stunned for a moment, and his face was full of surprise. It seems that you're also paying attention to me, Nie Tian said with a smile. And he said, is it because of my identity? The 5 forces behind the Heart of the Sky were all coveting the Heart of the Sky. When Nie Tian was in the Qinquan sect, many swordsmen did not approve of him, and some even wanted to kill him. Although Yu Jingchun was known as the top sword genius by the Crimson Life Loyal Heart, it was difficult to guarantee that he did not covet the Heart of the Sky. Since you have already obtained the Heart of the Sky, this is your opportunity, and I will not take it from you. Yu Jingshan said with a serious face. Yu Jingshan's expression was solemn as he said, "However, I will not show mercy to you just because you are the leader of the Supreme Sky Sect. I will not admit defeat either. Of course, I look forward to a fair fight with you." Nie Tian smiled faintly, and Yu Jingshan's straightforwardness made him feel a little ashamed. Your current peak combat strength should not be in the sword principle, but the martial principle, right? Yu Jingshan's eyes narrowed slightly, and he asked, "So what?" Nie Tian smiled faintly, and he asked, "I have seen your previous battles, and it is not wise for us to fight now. Why don't we change the way we fight?" Yu Jingshan's face was cold, and he said in a deep voice, "How we fight?" Nie Tian's face was calm, and he was looking forward to it. "We will fight in the formation." Yu Jingshan stretched out his hand, and a scroll rose into the air. Then, an endless amount of formation power gushed out, and a sword formation was formed. Chapter 4049. Seeing Yu Jingshan release the Tri-Talent Sacred Array, Nie Tian's eyes lit up, and he couldn't hide the excitement in his heart. His sacred heaven-defying sword was comprehended from the Tri-Talent Sacred Array. Although he had simulated the Tri-Talent Sacred Array with his divine sense, he didn't have the same feeling as before. Old ancestor Xingtian had said that the Tri-Talent Sacred Array was a natural array formed by the heaven and earth. The Tri-Talent Sacred Array that Yu Jingshan released from the scroll was obviously not the original Tri-Talent Sacred Array. However, the aura of the array was even purer and stronger than the Tri-Talent Sacred Array that Nie Tian came from. "Yu Jingshan, do you want to fight me in the Tri-Talent Sacred Array?" Nie Tian became cold and asked Yu Jingshan. It was obvious that Yu Jingshan was very familiar with the Tri-Talent Sacred Array. If he and Nie Tian were to fight in the array, Nie Tian might not be able to gain an advantage. "Don't worry, we will only compete with talent in the array and nothing else." Yu Jingshan could tell what Nie Tian was thinking and said proudly, "Your sword Dao realm is too much lower than mine. If we fight directly, it will be too unfair to you. Yu Jingshan, never take advantage of others. I just want to see what kind of talent you, the master of the sky, has to be able to obtain the recognition of the heart of the sky." Nie Tian's eyes slightly narrowed and the corners of his mouth twitched. He asked, "Then how do you want to compete with talent?" Although Yu Jingshan said that he didn't care that Nie Tian had fused with the heart of the sky, he definitely did care. After all, he was a member of the Heaven Martial Association and knew how powerful the heart of the sky was. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't jealous that an outsider had obtained the heart of the sky. "It's very simple." Yu Jingshan nodded and said, "I saw that the aura of your sword technique was similar to the Tri-Talent Sacred Array. You must have comprehended it in the Tri-Talent Sacred Array, right?" Nie Tian nodded and did not deny it. It seemed that Yu Jingshan was indeed paying close attention to him. Yu Jingshan narrowed his eyes, and a strange expression flashed across his face. "My sword technique is also comprehended from the 3-Talent Sacred Array. It's called the 9 Startling Swords. You and I will stay in the Trifecta Sacred Formation. We won't use our own strength, but only our sword moves. We will use the power of the formation to fight and see whose sword moves are more powerful." "Powerful. Interesting. I accept this method." Nie Tian understood immediately. He smiled faintly and agreed. Yu Jingshan's suggestion was very simple. Both sides would not use their own strength. Instead, they would use the power of the array to fight. In this way, it was a competition of the strength of the sword moves. Both of their sword moves were comprehended from the Trifecta Sacred Formation. The strength of their sword moves represented their comprehension and talent in the sword Dao. Yu Jingshan's intention was obvious. He wanted to tell Nie Tian that even if he obtained the heart of the sky, his talent in the sword Dao was still stronger than the Lord of the Sky. Although this method of fighting was fair in name, it was still advantageous for Yu Jingshan. After all, he had stayed in the Trifecta Sacred Formation for a longer period of time and had a deeper understanding of the power of the formation. However, this method of fighting was already not bad. If the two of them fought to the death, it would be even more disadvantageous for Nietian. After all, his swordsmanship was far inferior to Yu Jingqian's. The two of them did not start fighting for a long time, which caused the surrounding crowd to be dissatisfied. What are these two guys doing? Aren't they just wasting time? There are still so many battles to be fought. Do they want us to just sit here and watch them talk nonsense? How troublesome. If you want to fight, then fight. If you don't want to fight, then get off the stage. Although Yu Jingqian was very famous, the crowd's expressions changed when they saw that the two of them had not made a move for a long time. However, the judge looked very calm. His gaze shifted between Nietian and Yu Jingqian, and it was obvious that he was very interested in the two of them. The judge was also a swordsman, and he had already reached the inverse sword realm. He wanted to see how strong the talent of the two young swordsmen was. He was especially looking forward to seeing Yu Jingqian, who was known as the #1 swordsman of the Heaven Martial Association. "Let's begin," Yu Jingqian said with a sharp gaze. He was excited to see an opponent worthy of being defeated. "All right," Nietian agreed, and the sky sword appeared in his hand. However, there was no sword chi surging on the blade, only the sharpness of the blade. Sacred heaven-defying sword. Human sword slashes the stars. The next moment, the sky sword streaked across the void, and the momentum of the sword drew on the power of the formation. It set off waves of sword chi in the air, which pressed down on Yu Jingqian. Jingqian's first move, first element, shocking wind. At the same time, Yu Jingqian's figure also moved. The unfettered sword in his hand caused the surrounding space to tremble. In an instant, a powerful force surged out like a raging wave. Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was actually forced back several meters by the majestic force. Is the sword technique that you have comprehended only at this level? Yu Jingqian smiled coldly, and his face was full of disdain. However, he was a little surprised, and he was even very shocked. Although Nietian had only used one move, he had already noticed something strange. Although Nietian's sword technique had drawn on the power of the formation, the rise and fall of the sword clearly showed signs of going against the formation. If not for the fact that Nietian's sword technique was connected to the Trinity Holy Formation, Yu Jingqian would have suspected that Nietian's sword technique had really been comprehended from the Trinity Holy Formation. This is just the beginning. Nietian steadied himself and smiled calmly. I admire your confidence, but in front of me, your confidence will be completely destroyed. Yu Jingqian's face was cold, and the unfettered sword slashed through the void again. Suddenly, a majestic force condensed, and it was the second move of Jing Qin's 9 swords, yin and yang startling clouds. Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was extremely shocked. Yu Jingqian was indeed a peerless sword genius, and he had actually integrated the yin and yang realms into his sword technique, which greatly increased the power of his sword technique. With the help of the formation, the sword technique was instantly launched, and the wind and clouds moved at the same time. Moon-swallowing earth sword. In the next moment, the sword in the sky sank slightly, and the sound of the sword rang out. The sword technique of the formation was connected, and the momentum was natural. Bang! Then, the two forces collided, and a muffled sound was heard in the void. Nietian's figure was forced back again. On the other side, Yu Jingqian did not move at all, and he was as calm as a mountain. Without a doubt, Yu Jingqian was still the winner of the second move. Jingqian's third move, 3 talents shock. Then, Yu Jingqian did not give Nietian any chance to breathe, and the unfettered sword pierced out like a spiritual snake, suppressing everything. Sky sword reversing sun. Nietian's eyes trembled, and he also attacked, and the power in the sky shook the void. Bang! In the next moment, the two forces collided, and the void trembled, and Nietian's figure was forced back again. Chapter 40-50. Nietian could feel the pressure coming from the sword, and his eyes trembled slightly. He could feel that the sword in the sky was trembling as if it was frightened, and the sound of the sword humming was extremely chaotic. He moved to the side and stabbed his sword forward, using the momentum of the sword to retreat a few meters. Swoosh! A sword blade whistled through the air and brushed past his chest. This fellow's sword technique is indeed terrifying. Tian steadied himself, and he was shocked. Yu Jingchun did not use his sword intent. He only used his sword technique to activate the power of the array, and yet he was able to release a sharp force that was as sharp as a sword blade. Jing Chen's fifth technique, 5 elements overturning the sea. Then Yu Jingchun attacked again, and this time his sword actually activated the power of the array. The rolling force was vast and powerful, and it was like thousands of waves crashing down on Tian. Tian felt the violent pressure, and his eyes darkened. The sword in the sky was like a raging dragon, and he used the oneness of heaven and man technique to resist Yu Jingchun. Bang! The next moment, after a muffled sound, Tian was forced to retreat again, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. In fact, an attack of this level would not be able to hurt his martial body at all. However, he had an agreement with Yu Jingchun that if he did not use any other power, his primordial meridians would naturally not be able to operate. Under the premise of forcefully suppressing his own power, Tian's martial body was inevitably not used to it. The blood in his body was boiling, and he vomited blood. The two of them were fighting fiercely, but the crowd around them was very dissatisfied. Are these two guys messing around? If they continue to fight like this, when will it end? What are they doing? They obviously have the strength, but they're still fighting like this. Are they treating us like fools? Take your time and watch. They're a genius on the hidden dragon list. Most of the people present were not swordsmen, and even if they were swordsmen, only a few of them could understand the battle between Tian and Yu Jingchun. On the other hand, the judge was watching with great interest, and his eyes shone with a fiery light, as if he had found a treasure. He was a god-defying swordsman, so of course he could tell how terrifying Tian and Yu Jingchun were. Using sword moves to trigger the power of the formation to battle, this kind of battle method was very novel. However, Tian and Yu Jingchun's performance had truly broadened his horizons. It would not be an exaggeration to say that even if he were to personally attack, it would be extremely difficult for him to defeat both Tian and Yu Jingchun in the tri-element sacred formation. Furthermore, Tian and Yu Jingchun were so young, yet they had such a deep understanding of the sword Tao. It was truly rare. At this moment, the judge's gaze towards Tian had changed. It was burning hot. Although he favored Yu Jingchun more, Yu Jingchun was a member of the Heaven Martial Association, and he wouldn't care about him at all. However, Tian was different. Even though Tian was slightly weaker than Yu Jingchun, he was still very powerful. It would be a good idea to recruit him as a disciple. Seeing this, the judge's eyes lit up with excitement. With his status, if he were to take Tian as a disciple, Tian would be very happy. You're not bad, but this battle is over. At this moment, Yu Jingchun's eyes trembled slightly. The unfettered sword flew into the air, and suddenly, all the power of the formation in the surroundings was absorbed into the sword momentum. A terrifying force appeared, like a raging dragon, roaring in all directions. Tian's eyes trembled slightly, and his face darkened. Yu Jingchun's sword moves were stronger than the previous one, and each move was connected to each other. Every move was enhanced, and when he reached the 6th move, the 6 harmonies heaven and earth, he was actually able to release such a terrifying force. Heaven and earth unite, yin and yang combine. However, Tian didn't show any signs of weakness. Instead, he faced it head-on. The sword in the sky was like a dragon, and there was a hint of lightness amidst its forcefulness. The sound of a sword rang out in the void, and a weak sword shadow appeared, pouncing out like a wild beast. Bang! In the void, there was a loud bang, and a terrifying wave of air swept out in all directions, as if it wanted to engulf the entire world. Tian's figure retreated rapidly, and after he stabilized himself, he spat out a mouthful of blood. On the other hand, Yu Jingchun didn't move an inch, but his body swayed a little, and his face turned slightly ugly. He didn't expect that, even after using the 6th move, he still couldn't completely defeat Nie Tian. Again, at this moment, Nie Tian took a step forward with a smile on his face, and it was obvious that he was provoking Yu Jingchen. Arrogant. Yu Jingchen's face darkened, and he roared in a low voice. The seventh move, the 7 killing blood, broke out of the formation, and the void was suddenly filled with killing intent. Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly, and his figure retreated rapidly. The sword in the sky danced slightly in the air, and he used the formation to form a shield. Bang! However, the shield couldn't withstand Yu Jingchen's 7 killing blood, and it shattered immediately. Nie Tian's figure retreated again, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. If you don't use any other power, how long can you last after taking my sword? Yu Jingchen sneered, and he looked extremely arrogant. He had to admit that Nie Tian was far stronger than he had expected, and he was actually able to fight until the 7th move without being defeated. The winner hasn't been decided yet, and it's still uncertain who will have the last laugh. Nie Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and he smiled faintly. His eyes were filled with cunning. Could it be that he still has a move he hasn't used? Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled, and his heart was filled with shock. Nie Tian's calmness made him a little flustered. Come, let's continue. Then, Nie Tian smiled faintly, and he used the sword in front of his chest to block Yu Jingchen's attack. Your arrogance is worthy of me using the 8th move. Yu Jingchen furrowed his brows, and he swept across the sky in a carefree manner. The 8 Desolate's chaotic force rushed out, and the void trembled as if it was about to be torn apart. However, Nie Tian stood in the same place, and he didn't move an inch. Bang! In the next instant, a muffled sound rang out, and Nie Tian's figure retreated dozens of meters. While he was still in the air, he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, the moment he landed on the ground, he stood firmly. Although his expression was ugly, his eyes were incomparably sharp. Huh? Yu Jingchen looked at Nie Tian with a frown, and he exclaimed in surprise. Nie Tian didn't resist at all, and he took the 8 Desolate's chaotic force head-on. Moreover, he was still standing in the same place. It was truly terrifying. Do you admit defeat? Yu Jingchen's face sank, and he spoke in a cold tone. I want to see how strong your 9th move is. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, and he smiled indifferently. You're courting death. Yu Jingchen's eyes darkened, and he growled. Nie Tian was already injured, and if he took the 9th move, he would most likely be severely injured. This would undoubtedly have a huge impact on his next battle. Make your move, Nie Tian said calmly, and his eyes were filled with determination. Since you insist on doing this, I'll fulfill your wish. Yu Jingchen's expression changed, and he raised his unfettered sword high in the air. Suddenly, a majestic aura surged, and the 9th move of the Chun shocking 9 swords. 9 Extremes 1,000 Mountains was about to be unleashed. At the same time, Nie Tian's figure moved, and the sky sword slashed across the sky. The sword merged with the array, and the aura of the array was actually affected. 9 Extremes 1,000 Mountains. Chapter 4051. On the stage, Yu Jingchen used the 9th move of the 9 sword techniques, 9 Extremes 1,000 Mountains, and Nie Tian's Sacred Heaven defying sword at the same time. Boom! Boom! The sword techniques triggered the power of the formation, and at the same time, 2 low rumbling sounds could be heard. It was as though there were wild beasts pouncing out of the void, and 2 terrifying forces rushed out violently. These 2 brats are so terrifying. When the judge saw this, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. His heart was filled with shock, and the shock was written all over his face. He did not expect Yu Jingchen and Nie Tian to have such a deep understanding of the sword principle at such a young age. Even he might not be able to master this level of sword techniques. Bang! Then the 2 forces collided, and the void shook, and the entire formation shook. The judge's expression changed, and he was even more shocked. At this moment, he felt that his sword will had a reaction, and there seemed to be signs of a breakthrough in the sword principle. Nie Tian and Yu Jingchen were both young swordsmen, and even though Yu Jingchen's sword realm had reached the sword heavenly tribulation, he was still a far cry from the judge. The fight between the two young swordsmen had actually helped him comprehend the sword principle, and there were signs of a breakthrough. Was this really not a dream? While the referee was still in a state of shock, something strange happened. Boom! Suddenly, a strange sound came from the formation, and then the formation seemed to have been forcefully reversed. The two forces actually merged into one, and they merged into an even more terrifying force that pressed down on Yu Jingchen. The sudden change caught Yu Jingchen off guard. His eyes trembled as he cried out in shock. How could this be? In an instant, Yu Jingchen felt an intense killing intent rushing towards him, causing his heart to tremble. This was clearly the aura of death. However, the next moment, the pressure from the sword force suddenly weakened, and there was not much power left in it. Bang! Even so, Yu Jingchen was still pushed back a few meters, and he only managed to stabilize himself. He looked very embarrassed. Damn it! Yu Jingchen was enraged, and with a low roar, his aura surged out like a raging wave, causing the entire array to shake. And yet Tian frowned when he felt the sword aura pressing down on him. He said calmly, Yu Jingchen, you've lost. Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled, and his face was filled with shock. He was at a loss for words. Just now, in a fit of rage, he had directly released his own sword will, violating the previous agreement, and had indeed lost. Furthermore, if Tian hadn't withdrawn his attack in time, he would have been severely injured. In this competition, he had indeed lost. Why didn't you kill me? Yu Jingchen's face was filled with regret. After a while, he raised his head and asked Tian, You and I are not mortal enemies. Why would I want to kill you? Tian smiled faintly, his face calm. Yu Jingchen was stunned, and Tian's answer surprised him. Between cultivators, especially genius cultivators, there was a deep fear of each other. When many people fought, as long as there was a chance to kill their opponent, they would do it by hook or by crook. This was the first time Yu Jingchen had met someone like Tian, who was so open about victory and defeat. After a long time, Yu Jingchen's eyes darkened, and he sighed, I've lost this battle. Yu Jingchen, your sword technique is not weaker than mine. I was just lucky. Tian smiled faintly, and his face was filled with sincerity. No. Yu Jingchen smiled bitterly and said, Your sword principle and combat talent are indeed stronger than mine. In this battle, I was destined to lose from the very first move. The judge was stunned, and he did not understand Yu Jingchen's words. Tian smiled faintly, and he did not speak. He did not expect Yu Jingchen to be so smart as to be able to see through this point. Yu Jingchen also smiled and said, Your sword technique has the power to reverse the formation. From the moment you made your first move, you were secretly changing the flow of the formation's power. Every time I made a move, you borrowed my power to secretly change the formation's power. The reason why you only defended during my last few moves was because you were waiting for the formation's power to accumulate enough. When I used my last move, you finally made your move. You used your strongest move to reverse the formation's power, and you absorbed the power of my sword technique to counterattack and defeat him. Am I right? After saying that, Yu Jingchen's eyes shone with a strange light, and he looked at Tian quietly. I guess so. Tian smiled and said, However, your strength has exceeded my expectations. If I'm not wrong, the 9th move, 9 Extremes 1,000 Mountains, is not the final move of the Chun 9 swords, right? What Yu Jingchen had said was indeed what Tian had just done. He had used the sacred heaven-defying sword to reverse the formation's power, and he had cleverly used Yu Jingchen's own power to defeat himself. If Tian had only used his own power, it would have been impossible for him to defeat Yu Jingchen. After all, Yu Jingchen had cultivated in the formation for a long time, and his understanding of sword techniques and formations was above Tian's. It had to be said that Yu Jingchen's strength had exceeded Tian's expectations, especially the 9th move, 9 Extremes 1,000 Mountains. Its majestic power was really enough to split 1,000 mountains. Fortunately, Tian had been secretly accumulating power in the formation since the first move, so he could use the last move to win. However, at the same time, Nietian felt that 9 Extremes 1,000 Mountains was not the final move of the Chen 9 swords, and Yu Jingchen had not used it yet. Yes. Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled, and he nodded. He indeed had a move that he had not used yet, so he regretted it now. If he had used the final move of the Chen 9 swords, the outcome might have been different. Nietian, you're the most talented swordsman I have ever seen, Yu Jingchen said. Yu Jingchen continued. There are many people in the Heaven Martial Association who cultivate in the Trinity sacred formation, and many of them have comprehended powerful sword techniques from it. However, you're different. What you comprehended is the inverse 3 talents move. Your talent in the sword Dao is indeed above mine. After saying that, Yu Jingchen looked a little disappointed, but there was also a little excitement in his eyes. From today onwards, he had found an opponent that he had been waiting for. Even though he admitted that he was not as good as Nietian, he would not admit defeat. There was still a long way to go, and it was still uncertain who would be able to reach the peak of the sword Dao. Nietian smiled faintly. Yu Jingchen's sword heart was firm, and he was indeed worthy of the title of the #1 sword prodigy. Yu Jingchen, I would like to borrow your Trinity sacred array. Is that all right? Nietian asked with a faint smile. Chapter 4052. Nietian's face was calm as he sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate on the arena. When the crowd saw this, they were unhappy and started to shout. What is this kid doing? This is the arena of the hidden dragon battle, but he's actually cultivating. Isn't he looking down on all of us? This is too much. This kind of person should be banned from the competition. Isn't it just because he has some strength? How can he be so arrogant? The crowd was discussing, and it was obvious that they were very unhappy with Nietian. However, Nietian was very calm and focused on cultivating, completely ignoring the others. He knew that it was indeed inappropriate for him to do so, but the opportunity to break through was fleeting, and he could not wait any longer. When he was fighting with Yu Jingchen just now, he suddenly had a new understanding of the sword Dao, especially when the two of them activated the Tri-Talent Sacred Array's array intent. It gave him a new understanding of the sacred heaven defying sword and the sword Dao. Our battle is not over yet. Why are you so anxious? Yu Jingchen's eyes were ice as he looked around coldly and said in a deep voice. Of course, he knew what Nietian was doing and could not be disturbed at this moment. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to shout at us? However, Yu Jingchen's attitude provoked an even stronger resistance from the crowd. Someone shouted, and several people actually released their aura, ready to make a move. All of you shut up. At this moment, the judge stood up and looked at the crowd coldly. He said coldly, "This battle is not over yet. Don't blame me for being merciless if anyone dares to cause trouble." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward, and a powerful sword aura spread out in all directions. The crowd could not bear the impact, and they all retreated. The crowd was stunned and could not react for a long time. They did not understand why the judge was suddenly so angry. Yu Jingchen's eyes swept over the judge, and the corner of his mouth twitched. How could he not see that the judge was trying to rope in Nietian? It was not strange for a talented martial artist like Nietian to be tempted by the referee. However, Yu Jingchen understood that with Nietian's temperament, this judge's plan would fail. At this moment, streams of pure sword intent began to surge out from Nietian's body, and his aura continued to grow stronger. Yu Jingchen's eyes widened when he saw this scene, and he exclaimed in surprise. How could he have imagined that Nietian's sword Dao realm would actually break through so quickly? What was even more strange was that the aura on Nietian's body was still increasing. In the blink of an eye, Nietian had broken through from the first sky of the Oracle realm to the 5th sky. But how was this possible? Yu Jingchen had never seen anyone break through so quickly in their swordsmanship. It was just too strange. Did he enter the 3 talents secret realm? The next moment, Yu Jingchen seemed to have thought of something. His eyes trembled and his heart trembled. He had heard from the sacred heaven ancestor that there was a 3 talents secret realm within the 3 talents sacred formation, which contained a powerful sword intent. Only swordsmen who were extremely talented in sword Dao and recognized by the three-talent sacred formation would have the opportunity to enter. Although this was only a small formation created according to the three-talents sacred formation, it was the same as the main formation. It contained the Tao of heaven and earth and also had a gate to the three-talents secret realm. Looking at the situation in front of Nye Tian, there was only one explanation, and that was that he had entered the three-talents secret realm. Then, the sword aura on Nye Tian's body became stronger and stronger. In the blink of an eye, his swordsmanship had broken through to the ninth sky of the oracle realm. How is this possible? The judge was shocked by the scene in front of him. His eyes trembled, and he could not help but shout. He was a swordsman, but the scene in front of him was so shocking that it directly overturned his understanding of sword Dao. How could a swordsman break through to the sword Dao so quickly in the blink of an eye? Even those heaven and earth spiritual materials that could directly enhance sword intent could not achieve this. Could it be that Nye Tian had obtained some kind of sword Dao inheritance? But it did not seem like it. Nye Tian's sword intent was only getting stronger, but his aura did not change at all. He could not understand what was going on in front of him. This guy, what happened to this guy? At this time, the people below the stage also reacted and shouted. Although they were not swordsmen, the sword aura on Nye Tian's body kept getting stronger. This was obviously not normal. No one knew what happened to Nye Tian's body. Boom! At this time, a huge sword aura suddenly surged from Nye Tian's body, causing the surrounding void to tremble. The Holy Realm. Yu Jingqin's eyes trembled, and he exclaimed. In the blink of an eye, Nye Tian had broken through from the Oracle Realm to the Holy Realm. At this time, he was very sure that Nye Tian had definitely entered the three-talent secret land. After Nye Tian broke through to the Holy Realm, the sword aura on his body continued to surge. It was as if there was an endless abyss of sword intent in his body, causing his realm to continue to increase. Nye Tian, I look forward to fighting with you next time. Yu Jingqin's eyes trembled with excitement. It was a good thing for him that Nye Tian had become stronger, because he wanted to see how strong Nye Tian's sword principle would be after his realm had increased. If Nye Tian only had the sword realm of the Oracle Realm, it would be impossible for him to fight him head-on. Then, the sword aura around Nye Tian's body continued to surge. The judge at the side was completely stunned. His mouth was wide open, but he could not make a sound. After a while, Nye Tian's sword Dao surged from the first level of the Holy Realm to the ninth level of the Holy Realm. Outside his body, waves of sword intent flowed like a raging torrent, trying to help him break through to a higher sword realm. Unfortunately, each time he broke through, he missed by just a little bit. Soon, the sword intent around Nye Tian's body gradually disappeared. He opened his eyes, which were as bright as stars, clear and deep. The moment he stood up, a sharp aura was released. It was so sharp that it was terrifying. Yu Jingqin's eyes trembled. At that moment, he had an illusion that the person standing in front of him was not a person, but a sharp sword. Nye Tian's lips curled into a smile. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and forced himself to remain calm. One should know that he had just risen from the first level of the Oracle Realm to the ninth level of the Holy Realm. It was almost an increase of 2 realms. He could feel that the sword intent at this moment was 10 times stronger than before. The sword intent flowed in his body, and the sharp aura made him look like he was showing off his abilities. Chapter 4053. The Three Talents Secret Realm. Hearing these 4 words from Nye Tian, Yu Jingqin's eyes trembled as if thunder was ringing in his ears. He could not hide the shock in his heart. Although he had already guessed that Nye Tian was very likely to have entered the heaven, earth, and man's secret realm, he was still very shocked when his guess was confirmed by Nye Tian. The Three Talents Secret Realm had always been a legendary place in the mouth of the Divine Heaven Ancestor. In the entire Heaven Martial Group, other than the Divine Heaven Ancestor, no other swordsman had ever entered it. Many sword prodigies from the Heaven Martial Group had tried to enter the Three Talents Secret Realm, but none of them succeeded. Some even suspected that the three-talent secret realm was a lie made up by the divine heaven ancestor and that it did not exist. However, Yu Jingshun did not doubt the divine heaven ancestor's words at all because he had already faintly sensed the existence of the three talents secret realm inside the sacred formation. He had the chance to enter the real three talents sacred formation and cultivate it inside for many years, but he still could not enter the three talents secret realm. Then, he studied inside the three talents sacred formation for dozens of years, but he still could not enter the three talents secret realm. Yet Tian, on the other hand, entered the three talents secret realm directly from the three talents sacred battles duplication formation and accomplished something that he could not do for dozens of years in an instant. How could not be shocked? Yu Jingshun, I believe that you can also enter the three talents secret realm. Nie Tian looked at Yu Jingshun and naturally knew what the latter was thinking, so he said with a smile. However, he did not mention anything about the three talents secret realm at all. Yes. Yu Jingshun nodded with a strange excitement flashing in his eyes. He had to admit that Nie Tian's sword talent was indeed stronger than his, but he would not give up. On the contrary, the stronger the opponent, the more challenging it would be. Nie Tian faintly smiled. Yu Jingshun did not show any signs of disappointment, which proved that his heart of the sword was strong and that he was indeed a great sword genius. Nie Tian, I have lost to you in terms of sword techniques, and I accept it wholeheartedly. Yu Jingshun's eyes turned, and he said, Now, I am looking forward to fighting against you for real. Me too. Nie Tian faintly smiled with a calm expression. Your name is Nie Tian, right? At this moment, the judge descended and arrived before Nie Tian. With a smile on his face, he asked, Thank you for speaking up for me just now, my lord. Nie Tian nodded with a smile and expressed his gratitude. Just now, this judge had spoken up for him and calmed the crowd down. It was only right for him to thank him. Let me introduce myself. My name is Huang Yin, a teacher from the heavenly Dao Martial Palace. Huang Yin smiled faintly. Sword intent surged around him, causing him to appear extremely sharp. He said, I wonder if little brother Nie Tian is interested in joining the heavenly Dao Martial House. I, Huang Yin, can give you the slot in my hands right now. Regardless of your battle results, you will still be able to enter the heavenly Law Martial Palace. Moreover, if little brother Nie Tian is willing, I can take you as my personal disciple and guide you on your sword Dao in the future. His voice was not loud, and there was a hint of caution in his calmness. However, when it fell into the ears of everyone present, it was like a clap of thunder from the ninth heaven, deafening. In an instant, the surroundings were in an uproar. Could it be that this fellow is going to join the heavenly Dao Martial Palace just like that? I don't think his strength is anything special. What does this teacher see in him? To be chosen by a teacher from the heavenly Dao Martial Palace and to be accepted as a personal disciple, this brat must be really lucky. As the crowd discussed, the gazes they looked at Nie Tian became strange. There was shock, envy, and at the same time, a hint of fear. Although Nie Tian's performance on the battle stage was extremely spectacular, and some of the sword practitioners with high cultivation could see his strength, he did not display any powerful combat prowess. Thus, in the eyes of the majority, he was only sloppy and ordinary. However, as a teacher of the heavenly Dao Martial Palace, Huang Yin actually took the initiative to invite Nie Tian to join the heavenly Dao Martial Palace in front of everyone. Furthermore, he even said that he would accept Nie Tian as his personal disciple. This was simply too tempting. The heavenly Dao Martial Palace was the strongest out of the 5 academies, and they had always been regarded as the head of the 5 academies. Since Huang Yin was sent to host the Hidden Dragon Tournament, it meant that his position in the heavenly Dao Martial Palace was not low. For Nie Tian to be able to become a disciple of such an expert, it truly caused others to be envious. However, at this moment, Nie Tian frowned slightly, but he did not directly say anything. Little brother Nie Tian, what do you think of my suggestion? Seeing that Nie Tian did not speak, Huang Yin could not help but speak again. He was actually a little nervous, as though he was afraid that Nie Tian would reject him. This teacher, I'm really sorry, but I already have an academy that I like. Nietion's eyes flickered slightly. He bowed and said, Teacher Huang's kind intentions. This junior can only appreciate it. I'm really sorry. His voice was not loud, but every word he said caused Huang Yan's expression to turn uglier. By the time he finished speaking, Huang Yan's expression was already extremely ugly. His teeth were tightly clenched, and the veins on his forehead were clearly visible. It was obvious that he was suppressing his immense anger. When the crowd below heard Nietion's words, they were all stunned. Their eyes widened as they stared at Nietion, as though they suspected that they had heard wrongly. Who would have thought that Nietion would actually directly reject Huang Yan? Did I hear wrongly? What did this brat say? He rejected the heavenly Tao Martial Palace's invitation. This fellow is either a lunatic or a fool. The 5 academies were the sacred grounds of martial arts for countless cultivators, and the heavenly Tao Martial Palace was the head of the 5 academies. It was the sacred ground of all sacred grounds. Yet, Nietion actually rejected the heavenly Tao Martial Palace. This was truly out of everyone's expectations. Yu Jingchun, on the other hand, had a calm expression on his face. Just a moment ago, he was still worried that Nietion would agree to Huang Yan's invitation. But now, it seemed like his worries were unfounded. For a cultivator like Nietion, what he pursued was the pinnacle of martial arts. A mere teacher from the heavenly Tao Martial Palace naturally wouldn't be placed in his eyes. Young man, do you know what you were saying? At this time, Huang Yan, who had been suppressed for a long time, opened his mouth once again. His face was so gloomy that it seemed as though water could drip out of it. This junior is very clear about what I am saying. Thank you for your kind intentions. Nietion smiled faintly, his expression calm. This Huang Yan had helped him earlier, and he didn't want to make things difficult for him. Thus, he tried his best to be as humble as possible. However, it seemed like Huang Yan didn't notice his humility, and he only heard his rejection. Young man, I will give you one more chance to speak. Please think carefully before you speak. Huang Yan's eyes trembled, and a hint of killing intent flashed through them. Everyone's expression changed, and they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Anyone could tell that Huang Yan was directly threatening Nietion. Nietion couldn't help but frown when he sensed Huang Yan's killing intent. However, he didn't panic and directly said, Nietion, will not accept threats from anyone. Chapter 4054. The shocking scene on the martial arts arena made everyone suck in a breath of cold air. Their hearts were in their throats. Huang Yan was enraged and released a powerful sword aura. This was something no one had expected. Could it be that he was going to kill Nietion in front of so many people? Nietion's rejection of Huang Yan was indeed a loss of face for Huang Yan, and even for the Heavenly Law Martial House. However, as a teacher and a referee, it was inappropriate for him to openly attack a participant in the competition. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the enormous sword force descended, and it was as heavy as a mountain, causing Nietion's body to sink. The ground beneath his feet actually sank by 30 centimeters, and the entire arena shook. If the arena wasn't reinforced by the array, it would have shattered. However, Nietion stood firm, his back straight, and his determination was unyielding. Huang Yan's sword Dao was indeed very strong. Just the sword aura alone was enough to make Nietion feel unbearable. Fortunately, his martial body was strong, and his sword Dao had improved tremendously. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to stand. Little brat, there's no reason for you to stand in front of me. Seeing that Nietion didn't fall, Huang Yan's face darkened. Suddenly, the sword aura became even more terrifying. A powerful force landed on Nietion's body. Nietion's body trembled slightly. It felt like all the bones in his body were about to shatter. However, he still stood straight with his back as straight as a mountain. When the crowd saw this scene, they couldn't help but exclaim. Their expressions changed. Who would have thought that Huang Yan, a teacher of the Heavenly Law Martial House, would be so shameless as to attack Nietion directly? No matter what, his status wasn't on the same level as Nietion. His brazen attack was undoubtedly tarnishing the reputation of the Heavenly Law Marshal House. Yu Jingqian's eyes trembled. His face was tense, but there was nothing he could do. Even a genius like him wasn't a match for an expert like Huang Yan. Little brat, if you kneel before me today, I might spare your life. Huang Yan did not expect Nie Tian to be so stubborn. With a gloomy and cold face, he said, "If you don't kneel, I'll kill you right now. Kneel before your ancestors." Nie Tian's face was as ferocious as a wild beast. Flames seemed to be burning in his eyes as he roared. Suddenly, the soul of the sky in his body was released. A sword energy soared into the sky like an angry flood dragon. Bang! In the next instant, there was a loud bang in the air as the sword force was forcibly broken apart. Huang Yan's body trembled as he was forced to take a few steps back. He cut a sorry figure. His eyes trembled, and his face turned ugly. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Nie Tian would actually break through his sword momentum. Nie Tian was only a newly ascended 9th layer swordsman, yet he was able to break through the swordsmanship of swordsmen like him. How is this possible? Was Nie Tian's swordsmanship that strong? This brat must be killed. In an instant, a thought appeared in Huang Yan's mind, and he became resolute. He had a premonition that if Nie Tian didn't die, he would definitely become an existence that would shock the entire sacred world. If he didn't kill him now, he might not have another chance in the future. Although killing Nie Tian now would more or less affect the reputation of the Heavenly Law Marshal House, it would be worth it if he could get rid of a potential threat. Little brat, you asked for it. Once he made up his mind, Huang Yan roared. Immediately, the sword force around his body erupted like a tsunami. The entire martial stage shook violently, as if it was about to collapse. Danger! Yu Jingqian's eyes trembled as his expression changed. He shouted in horror. He never thought that Huang Yan would be so shameless as to kill Nie Tian in front of everyone. Nie Tian's eyes darkened as several astral souls in his body activated. Even if he was facing someone who was much stronger than him, he wasn't afraid at all. Even if he knew that he was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, he would still fight to the death. Boom! In the next instant, Huang Yan made his move. A terrifying sword shadow appeared, and its sharp aura pierced through the sky as if it could tear everything apart. At this moment, Nie Tian understood that no matter how many forbidden astral souls he released, he wouldn't be able to block Huang Yan's all-out attack. At the moment of life and death, a change occurred. Wah! A sword ray appeared in the void, and it was like a ray of light that cut through the darkness. It easily shattered the killing sword shadow. Huang Yan immediately sensed a figure, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back before stabilizing himself. Who are you? He suddenly raised his head and stared at the person who attacked him coldly. It's him. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he looked at the figure in the void. His heart immediately calmed down. The person who appeared at this moment was none other than the White Tiger Star Sovereign, who had disappeared for a long time. Nie Tian didn't expect the White Tiger Star Sovereign to appear at this moment. Oomph! The White Tiger Star Sovereign raised his eyebrows and laughed. Are all the people from the Heavenly Law Marshal House as shameless as you? You dare to interfere in the matters of the Heavenly Law Marshal House? Huang Yan's face sank as he roared. I don't care who you are. As long as it's not fair, I dare to interfere. The White Tiger Star Sovereign laughed with a cold expression. He didn't put Huang Yan in his eyes at all. Nie Tian looked at the White Tiger Star Sovereign and couldn't help but frown. He felt a little strange. It seemed that the White Tiger Star Sovereign had two different personalities. One was calm and cold, while the other was carefree. Do you mean that you don't put the Heavenly Law Marshal House in your eyes? Huang Yan's face darkened as he spoke coldly. I didn't say that. You made it up yourself. Don't blame me. The White Tiger Star Sovereign twitched his mouth and said, However, I did say that the people from the Heavenly Law Marshal House are shameless. You. Huang Yan's mouth twitched. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. However, he didn't make a move. The sword gleam made him realize that he wasn't a match for the person in front of him. What about me? The White Tiger Star Sovereign sneered with a provocative look. When the surrounding crowd saw this, they were shocked. They were all guessing who the White Tiger Star Sovereign was. He didn't put the heavenly law martial house in his eyes at all. At this moment, the White Tiger Star Sovereign looked at Nie Tian and Yu Jingxin and shouted with a smile, "The two of you, why aren't you coming down? Why are you occupying the arena?" Nie Tian and Yu Jingxin immediately understood and prepared to leave the arena. Let's see who dares to move. However, at this moment, Huang Yin let out a low roar and released a powerful aura to threaten Nie Tian and Yu Jingxin. If you don't want to die, stand there obediently and don't move. At the same time, the White Tiger Star Sovereign spoke coldly. His body was covered with a layer of frost. Suddenly, a sharp white blade appeared in the void and hung above Huang Yan's head. Chapter 4055. When the crowd saw the scene on the stage, their expressions changed. If the White Tiger Star Lord really killed Huang Yan in front of so many people, there would be a great show to watch. No matter how shameless and arrogant Huang Yan was, he was still a teacher of the Heavenly Law Martial House and the referee of the Hidden Dragon Battle. It was not an exaggeration to say that he represented not only the Heavenly Law Martial House, but also the 5 academies. If the White Tiger Star Lord killed him, it would be no different from provoking the Heavenly Law Martial House and the 5 academies. Even a faction like the Heavenly Law Sacred Pavilion would not dare to challenge the 5 academies. The crowd's eyes trembled, and their hearts leaped to their throats. They were clearly anticipating something. Many people wanted to see that sharp blade fall from the sky. Then, they would be able to see a true battle between experts. Huang Yin sensed the horrifying killing intent from the White Tiger Star Lord. His eyes trembled as he growled, "Madman, do you dare to kill me here?" He knew that he was not the White Tiger Star Lord's match, but he still did not believe that the other party would dare to kill him here. "You can try." The White Tiger Star Lord smiled coldly. The coldness in his eyes made people's hearts palpitate. Compared to his previous frivolous attitude, it was as if he had become a different person. "I'll try." Huang Yin laughed coldly. He was not afraid, and his figure moved immediately. Unless the White Tiger Star Lord was a madman, he would not dare to kill a referee in a Hidden Dragon Battle. Boom! At the same time he took a step forward, the white blade above his head moved. Instantly, the void rumbled as if it was about to split open. In an instant, Huang Yin felt the aura of death. His eyes trembled, and it was too late for regrets. At this moment, he was sure that the White Tiger Star Lord dared to kill him. At this moment, the crowd's eyes trembled, and their nerves tightened. As long as that white blade landed, Huang Yan's fate would be certain to be death. Boom! However, at this moment, the void trembled slightly. Following that, a horrifying force descended and forcefully shattered that white blade. Following that, a gray-robed figure descended. He stood in midair like a mountain, and the crowd felt a huge pressure. "It's Lord Zhouyu." Everyone's eyes trembled as they cried out in alarm. The person who had just appeared was none other than the host of the Hidden Dragon Tournament, the Heavenly Law Martial House's inner house, Elder Zhouyu. Zhouyu exuded a cold aura as he stood in the air, exuding an imposing aura. Finally, a big one. The White Tiger Star Venerate said with a faint smile as he looked at Zhouyu with a playful expression. "Lord Elder, this fellow is openly disrupting the Hidden Dragon Battle. He deserves death." Huang Yan's eyes trembled with joy when he saw Zhouyu appear, and he shouted loudly, "Huang Yan, what's going on?" At this moment, Zhouyu finally spoke. His eyes swept over Huang Yan as he asked in a cold tone, "Lord Elder, these two swordsmen are fighting on the stage, fighting to the death. I saw that they are both talented swordsmen, so I stepped in to stop them." The corner of Huang Yan's mouth twitched. He bowed slightly and said, "Who knew that this guy would suddenly interfere and want to kill me?" When the crowd heard Huang Yan's words, their faces couldn't help but change. All of them were filled with disgust. This Huang Yan was, after all, a teacher of the Heavenly Tao Martial Palace. He could be considered an expert of a region. How could his words be made up? "You are really shameless to the extreme." The White Tiger Star Venerate swept his gaze over Huang Yan and smiled coldly. Do you take this big elder for a fool, or do you take all of us for blind? Lord Elder, everything this subordinate said is the truth. There is no falsehood at all, Huang Yin said loudly as he glared at the white tiger star venerate. Zhou Yu frowned. His gaze was deep and murderous like a lion. He was no fool. From the reactions of the crowd, he could tell that Huang Yin was framing him. If this were any other place, Zhou Yu would have killed the white tiger star venerate without caring about the truth. However, it was different now. This was the venue of the hidden dragon battle. Cultivators from the all-heavens sacred world were everywhere. There was no lack of people from major factions among them. If Zhou Yu insisted on shielding Huang Yin, it would be the same as disregarding the dignity of the heavenly Dao Martial Palace. Although Huang Yin was also a member of the heavenly Dao Martial Palace, he was just a lowly teacher. His status was far inferior to an inner institute elder like him. If Zhou Yu acted shamelessly as well, the entire world would mock the heavenly Dao Martial Palace. Shut up. Huang Yan's gaze swept across the white tiger star venerate. Then, he looked back at Huang Yin and said coldly, "Apologize to this lord." Huang Yin was stunned. He thought he had heard wrong. Zhou Yu actually wanted him to apologize to the white tiger star venerate? Why? Hurry up. Zhou Yu's expression darkened as he roared again. Yes. Huang Yin reacted and nodded in shock. He looked at the white tiger star venerate with an unsightly expression and said softly, "I'm sorry." The white tiger star venerate's lips twitched slightly. He looked at Zhou Yu and said, "Looks like there are still reasonable people in the heavenly Dao Martial Palace." Whoosh! After saying that, his figure moved slightly. Immediately, a sharp blade whistled past, and a tear appeared in space. When Zhou Yu saw this, his eyes trembled, and he was shocked. He had not expected the white tiger star venerate to be so powerful that he could tear space-time. With his current cultivation, he could also tear space-time, but it would not be as easy as the white tiger star venerate. Fortunately, he had not acted rashly. If he had attacked directly, he would not have been a match for the white tiger star venerate. The next moment, Zhou Yu frowned and asked, "How should I address you?" "Just call me Old Bai." The white tiger star venerate laughed and said, "If you want to seek revenge, you can look for the myriad Yuan Pavilion's Qing Chi. I'm in charge of causing trouble, and he's in charge of cleaning up after me." Nie Tian could not help but be stunned, and black lines appeared on his face. Was the white tiger star venerate before him really the same person as the white tiger star venerate he had met before? Zhou Yu's eyes also trembled, and then he said with a faint smile, "So, you are Grandmaster Qing Chi's friend. There's no need for formalities." The white tiger star venerate waved his hand and said, "After all, this is the stage of the Hidden Dragon Tournament. Some people are not qualified to be judges. They can't even be fair, so how can they be teachers? In my opinion, those who are not qualified should just leave." Everyone was stunned. The white tiger star venerate's attitude was a little too arrogant. "Mr. Bai is right." Zhou Yu frowned. Then he looked at Huang Yin and said, "Huang Yin, from now on, you are no longer a judge. Go and reflect on yourself." Huang Yin was stunned, and he could not say anything. Chapter 4056. The storm came to an end for now. At this moment, the white tiger star lord looked at Nie Tian and said with a faint smile, "Nie Tian, you'd better perform well in the upcoming matches." Qing Chi said that if you don't perform well, he'll take back the myriad Yuan sacred medallion. Of course. Nie Tian smiled and nodded in response. He naturally understood what the white tiger star lord meant. He clearly wanted to use Qing Chi to protect him. So this little brother is also Grandmaster Qing Chi's friend. Zhou Yu was an astute person. His eyes flickered as he looked at Nie Tian and said, "Huang Yin scared you just now. I apologize on his behalf." Nie Tian nodded. "Lord Elder, you were too polite." Nie Tian smiled calmly. Everyone's expressions changed when they saw this. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. An inner institute elder of the heavenly law martial house was actually apologizing to a small fry like the Tiani sage? Were they really seeing things? How could these people know how powerful the 10,000 yuan sacred token was? Zhou Yu had a noble status and was very knowledgeable. He naturally knew what the 10,000 yuan sacred token meant. The fact that Qing Chi could give Nie Tian the 10,000 yuan sacred token meant that Nie Tian's status was extraordinary. Although the 10,000 yuan pavilion was not very famous in the all-heaven sacred world, Zhou Yu knew that it was an extremely powerful organization. Nearly half of the major cities in the all-heaven sacred world had city-protecting formations and barriers made by the 10,000 yuan pavilion. One could see how powerful it was. Perhaps the 10,000 yuan pavilion was not a particularly powerful organization, but it was like a huge underground net. Once it was moved, many towering trees would be dragged along. That was why Zhou Yu was especially polite to Nie Tian. He could not help but feel some lingering fear. If Huang Yin had really killed Nie Tian, it would have been terrible. He would have completely offended the 10,000 yuan pavilion. Although the heavenly law martial house was not afraid of the 10,000 yuan pavilion, it was clearly unwise to offend such a powerhouse over such a small matter. Nie Tian, I'm leaving. Then, the White Tiger Star Lord smiled faintly and left with a flash. Nie Tian smiled faintly and did not say anything else. After that, the Hidden Dragon contest continued. Another judge appeared, replacing Huang Yin. After Nie Tian walked down the stage, he continued to pay attention to the other battles. At this moment, a battle on an arena attracted his attention. Boom! A tall and sturdy figure stood in the sky above the arena. His entire body surged with powerful saber chi that was like a huge wave, causing him to seem mighty like a mountain. This person's saber chi is so domineering. Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly as he exclaimed in his heart. Judging from the ferocity of this person's saber chi, he was definitely a saber heavenly tribulation level saber wielder. His name is Feng Wang Shang, ranked 8th on the Hidden Sky list. At this time, Yu Jingchun walked over to Nie Tian's side and said with a faint smile. It turned out that he was also paying attention to this battle. Are you familiar with him? Nie Tian couldn't help but ask with a smile. If he remembered correctly, Yu Jingchun was ranked 9th on the Hidden Sky list. He was one rank lower than Feng Wang Shang. I have fought with him 3 times, and I lost twice and drew once. Yu Jingchun smiled and nodded. Does that mean that his strength is above yours? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he asked jokingly. Perhaps. Yu Jingchun's lips twitched, but he did not deny it. No martial artist would easily admit that they were weaker than others, let alone a genius like Yu Jingchun. It seems he's also going to be a formidable opponent. Nie Tian laughed, his eyes blazing as he stared at the king bestowed tomb. Kill! And at this moment, the cultivator opposite King Shang let out a low roar. His figure flashed, and he charged over madly. Bang! However, in the next moment, Feng Wang Shang took a step forward and released an unstoppable force. Suddenly, a powerful blade chi whizzed out, and the sound of a wolf howling could be heard in the void. Then, with a muffled sound, the martial artist was directly smashed into pieces, and not even his bones were left. The horrifying scene caused Nie Tian to frown, and his expression flickered. He did not expect Feng Wang Shang to be so ruthless and decisive. From the looks of it, Feng Wang Shang did not seem like a cruel and bloodthirsty person. Yu Jingchun could tell what Nie Tian was thinking, so he smiled bitterly and said, "This fellow believes that the strong can improve themselves, so he will not kill indiscriminately. However, if someone encounters him, he will definitely not show mercy." In the past, when he first fought with Feng Wang Shang, he almost died at his opponent's hands. Nie Tian nodded and did not say anything else. Every martial artist had their own martial Tao. Although Nie Tian did not agree with Feng Wang Shang's actions, he would not deliberately criticize him. In fact, compared to people like Xiao Wanjie who killed indiscriminately, Feng Wang Shang was already considered very good. Yu Jingchun, I look forward to fighting with you. Feng Wang Shang killed his opponent in one move, then looked at Yu Jingchun and said directly. As for Nie Tian, who was beside Yu Jingchun, he was not even interested in looking at him. Anytime, Yu Jingchun smiled indifferently, his eyes blazing. For now, an opponent like Feng Wangshang was obviously more exciting than Nie Tian. Next, Nie Tian continued to watch the other battles. Soon, another 5 days passed. Nie Tian had already fought 44 battles, and his battle record was still a complete victory. His luck was not bad, as the opponents he encountered were not very strong. In fact, no one could force him to use his true strength. After 5 days, his sword Dao realm was already very stable. Moreover, he could use all kinds of sword techniques and sword intent, and even fuse other types of energy. At this time, what he needed the most was a real opponent so that he could fight to his heart's content. Only the most realistic battle could test a martial artist's true strength. Look over there. At this time, someone suddenly exclaimed. Nie Tian frowned and looked at an arena in the distance. 2 figures appeared in the air, and his expression changed. One of the faces was very familiar to him. It was Jun Jianxing. The other face was also not unfamiliar to him. It was the bladesman ranked 8th on the Hidden Sky list, Feng Wangshang. Jun Jianxing's luck was really bad, as he actually encountered a strong martial artist like Feng Wangshang. In the next moment, Nie Tian suddenly recalled Yu Jingchen's words. His face sank, and his expression turned extremely ugly. Feng Wangshang believed in the strong, and no matter what kind of opponent he faced, he would not show mercy. Although Jun Jianxing's cultivation was not high, his combat strength was not weak. However, compared to a strong martial artist like Feng Wangshang, Jun Jianxing was clearly inferior. In fact, Nie Tian even felt that Jun Jianxing might not be able to take a single strike from Feng Wangshang. Nie Tian's figure moved, and he came to the side of the arena. Is he your friend? Yu Jingchen's figure appeared next to Nie Tian, and he asked in a deep voice. Yes. Nie Tian nodded, and he was obviously very worried. Yu Jingchen frowned and sighed, but he did not say anything. Chapter 4057. What's wrong? Nie Tian noticed that something was wrong with Yu Jingchen's expression and could not help but frown. I hope nothing bad happens. Yu Jingchen did not explain and said in a deep voice. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he had a bad premonition. On the martial arts arena, 2 figures stood in the void. One was as sharp as a sword, and the other was as majestic as a mountain. Your saber chi is so strong. Jun Jianxing could feel the pressure from the saber chi, and his eyes trembled slightly. I hate swordsmen the most in my life. King Shang's face was as cold as ice, and his eyes were surging with murderous intent. Nie Tian frowned, and his heart sank again. He had paid attention to King Shang's battles before. Although all of his opponents had died tragically at his hands, Nie Tian had never felt such a strong murderous intent from King Shang. However, Nie Tian had never sensed such a strong killing intent from King Shang. Furthermore, the way King Shang was looking at Jun Jianxing was as if he was looking at a mortal enemy. Jun Jianxing could not possibly know King Shang. Why would the latter look at him like that? Nie Tian frowned and was puzzled. Murderous intent. Jun Jianxing's eyes trembled and his face darkened. Your Excellency, I don't think we know each other. Have you mistaken me for someone else? Die. King Shang's face was gloomy, and he let out a low roar. His aura exploded in an instant like a mountain flood or an avalanche. The rolling momentum swept everything as if the world was about to collapse. So strong. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he exclaimed in his heart. He did not expect King Shang to be so strong. Even he might not be able to withstand such a terrifying saber chi. Jun Jianxing suddenly felt a strong pressure coming towards him. His face suddenly changed, and he could not hide his horror. He then retreated quickly. Unfortunately, he was still 1 step too late. In an instant, the huge saber chi roared like a rolling wave. In the bloody scene, Jun Jianxing's body was destroyed. Hiss! Everyone's expression changed when they saw this scene, and they sucked in a breath of cold air. No one expected the saber chi that erupted from King Shang to be so terrifying. This! Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled, and he was suddenly speechless. Nie Tian's face was gloomy. He then moved and came to the sky. He grabbed the void, and a starlight whirlpool fell into his palm. It was the Earth Destruction Astral Soul. Without any hesitation, he directly placed the Earth Destruction astral soul into the 9 extremities. In the eyes of others, Jun Jianxing was already dead, but Nie Tian knew that Jun Jianxing would soon be reborn in the Earth-extinguishing star soul. However, at that very moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt an ice-cold, killing intent appear and lock onto him like a giant invisible hand. He raised his head and looked at King Shang, who was in the sky above the arena. His eyes. King Shang's eyes. Swordsman. King Confirmant's eyes were filled with killing intent as he coldly spat out 2 words. Nie Tian, on the other hand, frowned. His face was incomparably gloomy, cold, and murderous. You shouldn't have appeared in front of me, King Shang said coldly. He then took a step forward, and a gigantic saber chi appeared in the sky. It was like a mountain that pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect King Shang to attack directly. Bang! Right at this moment, a strand of sword chi appeared in the sky with the momentum of a swimming dragon, and it attacked to forcefully block the enormous saber shadow. King Shang, I'm your opponent. A silhouette landed beside Nie Tian and spoke to King Shang cold. It was Yu Jingshun. Yu Jingshun. King Shang's eyes were extremely gloomy. He shouted out his name and said, Between you and me, there will be no end until one of us dies. Yu Jingshun was not afraid at all. He smiled coldly and said, King Shang, if you want to fight, I will accompany you anytime. Do you dare to fight now? King Shang spoke in a low voice, his aura overbearing. Why wouldn't I dare? Yu Jingshun laughed coldly. He then took a step forward, and a wave of sword chi shot up into the sky. It was like a sharp blade that was about to tear the sky apart. Nie Tian was the closest to Yu Jingshun, and he could feel the aura of Yu Jingshun's sword will. His eyes trembled, and he was extremely shocked. Even though he had broken through to the 9th sky of the Saint Realm, he was still far from Yu Jingshun's level. If the previous battle had been a battle of real strength, he would have most likely lost. Come! King Shang's body was burly, and he roared. His voice was like a clap of thunder. Suddenly, a huge wave of saber chi filled the air and rushed in all directions. Bang! In the next moment, the saber chi and sword chi collided. There was a muffled sound in the air, and terrifying waves of chi spread out. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. However, Yu Jingshun and King Shang were like mountains. They stood in the sky and did not move an inch. Nie Tian frowned slightly, and he retreated a few thousand meters. If the 2 of them were to fight, it would not be easy to determine the winner. When the crowd saw the scene in the sky, their eyes lit up. They were obviously looking forward to the battle. King Shang and Yu Jingshun are both in the top 10 of the Hidden Sky list. Their battle will be incredible. One is ranked 8th, and the other is ranked 9th. Their strength should be about the same. There will be a good show to watch. I heard that the 2 of them have fought a few times in order to compete for the ranking. Yu Jingshun lost more often than he won. I wonder what the result will be this time. The crowd discussed excitedly and waited for the show to begin. Although the elimination round was also very exciting, it was very rare to see battles between strong cultivators, especially those who were at the peak of the Hidden Dragon battle. King Shang and Yu Jingshun were undoubtedly the top cultivators of the Hidden Dragon battle this time. They might even be candidates to compete for the title of Wu Kuei. Their battle was naturally the focus of the crowd. Yu Jingshun, you and I have fought 3 times, and you have survived all of them. In the sky, King Confirmant coldly said, but this time you won't be so lucky. Is that so? Yu Jingshun smiled coldly, and his eyes were filled with arrogance. He had lost before, but that did not mean that he would lose this time. It had been a few years since his last battle with King Shang. His strength was no longer what it used to be. He was very confident that he could defeat King Shang. Chapter 4058. What a terrifying saber. When the spectators felt the terrifying aura emanating from Ghost Rend, they couldn't help but tremble in fear. The moment Nie Tian saw Ghost split, his eyes flickered and his expression flickered. Other than the powerful saber chi, he could also feel an even more demonic aura from Ghost Rend. It felt like the power of a bloodline, but it also felt like the aura of a curse. Nietian, this fellow saber is a little strange. At this time, Fat Cat spoke. Nietian nodded. The fact that Fat Cat didn't explain in detail meant that she didn't see the problem with King Shang's saber. Nietian frowned. He couldn't help but worry for Yu Jingqian. What are you two doing? Just when the two of them were about to start fighting, a majestic voice rang out as a silhouette descended from the sky. That silhouette was as heavy as a mountain, causing the entire space to sink. In an instant, the power of the saber and sword shattered, and both King Shang and Yu Jingqian were forced to retreat. The two of them stabilized themselves and looked at the figure in the sky. It was the host of the hidden dragon battle, the heavenly Dao Martial Palace's inner dean Elder Zhou Yu. King Shang and Yu Jingqian's faces sank, but they didn't dare to speak. No matter how arrogant they were, they didn't dare to show any disrespect in front of Zhou Yu. This is the hidden dragon battle, not a place for you to fight. Zhou Yu's face darkened, and he said in a cold tone, "If you want to fight, then fight until the last moment of the hidden dragon battle. Let everyone see who is the true expert." King Shang and Yu Jingqian didn't dare to speak, and they could only silently agree. Zhou Yu had personally appeared, so they naturally didn't dare to disobey. Continue. Zhou Yu didn't say anything else. He looked cold at the judge on the stage and nodded. Yes. The judge nodded and signaled King Shang and Yu Jingqian to step down. Stage 4, 6, 6, Hidden Dragon number 2045 vs. Hidden Dragon number 268. Then, the judge announced the next battle. At the same time, his expression was a little strange, as if he had thought of something. When Nietian heard these two hidden dragons, he couldn't help but be stunned. It seemed like Hidden Dragon 2045 was Yu Jingqian. Yu Jingqian was slightly taken aback, and he stopped moving. At the same time, King Shang's figure also stopped. He suddenly turned around to look at Yu Jingqian and sneered, "Yu Jingqian, it seems like the heavens want us to fight." Hidden Dragon number 267 and number 8. It was him. When the crowd saw this, their eyes trembled, and their expressions became excited. Who would have thought that right after Zhou Yu stopped the battle between King Shang and Yu Jingqian, the two of them would meet in the arena? Just as King Shang had said, the heavens had allowed them to fight. Zhou Yu had yet to leave. His old face immediately darkened as he glared at the judge cold. He then said, "This elder will personally be the judge for this match." This. Everyone looked at Zhou Yu, and they couldn't help but be stunned. Zhou Yu was an inner courtyard elder of the heavenly Dao Martial Palace, and he was also the host of the Hidden Dragon battle. Yet, he was actually going to personally be the judge? Wasn't this giving King Shang and Yu Jingqian too much face? While everyone was still in shock, Zhou Yu's figure had already landed on the stage. Following which, King Shang and Yu Jingqian moved at the same time, landing on the stage. The two of you, listen up. This is an arena, not a life and death stage. This elder hopes that the two of you won't go too far. Zhou Yu's expression was gloomy as he glanced at King Shang and Yu Jingqian. It was obvious that he didn't want the two of them to fight to the death. From the looks of it, Zhou Yu wasn't a bad person. At the very least, he was someone who cherished talent. King Shang and Yu Jingqian nodded, but their auras didn't weaken in the slightest. It was obvious that they were prepared to fight with their full strength. Zhou Yu frowned and shook his head. He had already decided in his heart that if there was a need, he would intervene. Boom! Boom! Right at that moment, King Shang and Yu Jingqian released their auras at the same time. They were like two mountains, but one was a majestic mountain range, while the other was a towering mountain peak. These two fellows are so terrifying. Everyone's eyes trembled with excitement and nervousness. They were even more excited than if they were the ones fighting. Nietian noticed that even Xiao Wan, Jia, Gong Yu, and Gue Zigue had come to watch the battle. King Shang and Yu Jingqian were both ranked in the top 10 of the Hidden Sky list, and they were enough to pose a threat to them. It was normal for them to come and watch the battle. Boom! Right at that moment, on the stage, King Shang and Yu Jingqian didn't waste any time and attacked directly. A huge blade shadow and a sharp sword shadow collided. Suddenly, the void exploded, and a terrifying wave of air rolled out, wreaking havoc in the void. In the next moment, King Shang and Yu Jingchun both retreated at the same time. After they stabilized themselves, they both vomited blood. King Shang was injured by the sharp sword shadow, and Yu Jingchun was injured by the powerful blade shadow. Everyone's eyes trembled violently, and their faces were filled with shock. Who would have thought that the battle had just begun and Ling Xian was already going all out? Zhou Yu stood coldly in the air, and his old face was gloomy. He had just warned them not to overdo it, and the two of them were already fighting to the death. They were really giving face to him, the referee. Nie Tian glanced at Zhou Yu, and his heart calmed down a little. With Zhou Yu around, at least Yu Jingchen's life wouldn't be in danger. Zhou Yu would naturally be the referee for this battle, and he wouldn't let anything happen to the two geniuses. Very good. In the sky, King Shang roared, and the blade qi around his body surged like the sea. It rumbled in the void, and it sounded like thousands of beasts were galloping. Yu Jingchun, on the other hand, was surrounded by a murderous sword qi, and his entire body seemed to be standing in the middle of a storm. Looking at the stance of the two, the battle between the blade and the sword would only end when one of them died. Kill! Immediately after, King Shang attacked again, and the ghost rend slashed across the void. The blade shadow was like a mountain, and it fell with a loud bang. The heavenly Tao seemed to sink, and it seemed to be wailing under a huge pressure. At the same time, Yu Jingchun moved like lightning, and endless sword intent gathered in an instant. It was the sixth move of the Chun shocking 9 swords, the 6 harmonies heaven and earth. Boom! Bang, bang, bang. In the next instant, the blade and the sword collided, and endless energy exploded, turning into endless waves that crazily rushed out, and the heavens and earth were thrown into chaos. Everyone looked up at the sky, and they could only see the blade light and the sword shadow flickering. They couldn't see King Shang and Yu Jingchen at all. After a long time, the void gradually calmed down, and the two figures appeared again, standing as cold as a mountain. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he saw that Yu Jingchen's body had several bloody wounds, and his face was slightly pale. It was obvious that his injuries were not light. As for King Shang, the blade qi around his body was even more vigorous than before. It seemed like the battle just now hadn't affected King Shang's strength at all, and it had even made him stronger. Could it be that this guy's strength is endless? Nie Tian frowned, and he felt strange. Even someone with a strong martial body like him would be at a disadvantage after such a high-intensity battle. However, King Shang was getting stronger and stronger, and it was very strange. Chapter 4059. Nie Tian looked up at the king killer in the sky, his divine sense locked onto the ghost rend in his hand. His eyes trembled slightly, as if he was a little nervous. In the next moment, he suddenly discovered something. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, and his expression changed. He exclaimed in his heart, "How is this possible?" He simply couldn't believe that he actually sensed a trace of a divine soul's aura from Ghost Rend. This divine soul aura was very strange. It was not like a martial artist, but like some kind of life form with strong self-awareness. There was actually a strange divine soul inside the Yuan Ling saber. This was too strange. Nie Tian had never encountered such a situation before. If I'm not mistaken, the saber in this fellow's hand should be a demonic blood saber, the fat cat said in a deep voice. Demonic blood spirit saber? Nie Tian exclaimed in surprise. The divine soul lurking in the saber should be a blood spirit. The fat cat nodded with a gloomy expression. What is a blood spirit? Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he could not help but ask. The blood spirit is a strange creature in the early primordial era. It doesn't have a physical body, but it has a powerful spirit, and it can fuse itself with some special powers, such as barriers, formations, and curses. The fat cat's eyes trembled slightly as she said, "The blood spirit in this guy's saber. It should have been fused with some kind of bloodline curse mark. Once the blood spirit force is released, I'm afraid his strength will increase by several folds." This When Yetian heard what Fat Cat said, he couldn't help but be shocked. He had never heard of a creature with a soul, but no body in this world. Sanguis was indeed unique. It could actually fuse with certain types of energy. It was no wonder that Nyetian could sense such a unique aura from the ghost-splitting blade. It's over. Just at this moment, King Fengshang's eyes darkened as he let out a thunderous roar. Instantly, his aura skyrocketed, shooting up into the sky. The terrifying saber chi was like a stampede of 10,000 beasts, as though it wanted to destroy and suppress everything. How is this possible? Yu Jingqian's eyes trembled, and his expression changed as he exclaimed in his heart. He couldn't imagine that after fighting for so long, the king warrior would be able to erupt with such power. Furthermore, he felt that this battle was very strange. It was as if King Shang had an unfamiliar aura that made him feel intimidated. However, when he tried to sense it carefully, he discovered that the aura within the king-conferred warrior's body had disappeared. He could clearly sense that the King Shang was different from before, but he couldn't tell what was different. In the next instant, Yu Jingqian's eyes trembled as he muttered, "The last move." After that, his entire aura changed. Streams of sword chi frenziedly gathered together and shot up into the sky. The sharpness of the sword chi felt like it could tear everything apart. It was obvious that he was going to use the final form of the 9 startling swords. At this time, he could only give it his all. Perhaps he might be able to turn the tables. Enough. However, right at this moment, a low voice suddenly rang out, and a powerful force appeared in the void, forcefully suppressing King Shang and Yu Jingqian's aura. King Shang and Yu Jingqian retreated at the same time, and a formless shockwave pushed them out of the arena. In the next moment, King Shang steadied himself and looked at Zhou Yu in the sky as he shouted in a cold voice, "Lord, what are you doing?" In that instant, the person who had stopped their clash of ultimate moves was Zhou Yu. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them, and they all cried out in shock as they stared at the king's bestowal. Zhou Yu's sudden attack had already exceeded everyone's expectations, and the fact that King Shang had directly questioned Zhou Yu was even more shocking. No matter what, Zhou Yu's status was still there. No matter how talented King Shang was, he was still a junior in an ant-like existence. What right did he have to shout at the dignified dean of the heavenly Dao Martial Palace? That was close. Nyetian took a deep breath, and the tense expression on his face eased up. Although Yu Jingqian's aura had become much stronger in that instant, it was still far from being comparable to King Shang's. If the two of them had really fought, even if Yu Jingqian didn't die, he would have been severely injured. Fortunately, Zhou Yu had stepped in to protect Yu Jingqian. Zhou Yu coldly stood in the air, his eyes filled with killing intent. For a junior to shout at him in front of so many people, it was truly a humiliation to him. But contrary to his expectations, he did not get angry. Instead, he coldly stared at King Killer and said in a heavy voice, "This battle shall end here." "Why?" King Shang's face was cold as he roared. "Because I'm the referee," Zhou Yu replied coldly, and his face was gloomy. There was a limit to his patience, and if King Shang continued to be overbearing, he wouldn't mind giving him some punishment. King Shang's face was gloomy, and he didn't say anything else. It was obvious that he was angry in his heart. He was confident that the saber strike just now was enough to kill Yu Jingqian. However, Zhou Yu's sudden intervention had ruined his plans. "King Shang is the victor of this battle," Zhou Yu said coldly. After that, his silhouette flashed as he left. Everyone was stunned, and they couldn't react for a long time. "Yu Jingqian, your luck is really good." King Shang's face darkened, and he stared at Yu Jingqian coldly. "I have indeed lost this battle." Yu Jingqian frowned, and he said, "I hope we will have another chance to fight." He was someone who knew his own strength, and he had indeed felt a strong threat just now. He had to admit that King Shang's strength was indeed stronger than his. However, he wasn't discouraged. If he had another chance to meet King Shang, he would still fight to the end. It wasn't shameful to lose, but it was shameful to be afraid to fight. King Shang sneered, and he didn't say anything else. His figure flashed, and he left. The shocking battle between the saber and sword had ended just like that. Yu Jingchun left the arena, and he went to Nie Tian's side. "Are you all right?" Nie Tian looked at Yu Jingchun, and he checked the latter's wounds. They were all flesh wounds, and none of his vital organs had been injured. "It shouldn't be a big problem. I still lost." Yu Jingchun smiled bitterly, and he said, "I didn't expect that his strength would increase so quickly." "There's something wrong with his saber." Nie Tian frowned, and he said in a low voice, "Saber?" Yu Jingchun's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but be stunned. Then his expression changed, as if he had sensed something. He had felt that King Shang was different from before, and after Nie Tian's reminder, he suddenly realized that King Shang's ghost-rending aura had changed. There's a blood spirit in his saber, and it can instantly increase his strength by several times, Nie Tian said with a bitter smile. Chapter 4060. King Shang had fought with Jun Jianxing because Jun Jianxing was a swordsman, which was why King Shang had killed him. King Shang's hatred for Yu Jingchun seemed to be because Yu Jingchun was a swordsman. Nie Tian was curious as to why King Shang hated swordsmen so much. Although the saber and the sword were different, they were not necessarily mortal enemies. On the contrary, the saber and the sword could sometimes complement each other, which was why many swordsmen and saber users could become good friends. However, King Shang was different from others. His hatred for swordsmen was so deep that it was incomprehensible. King Shang was actually a swordsman a long time ago, Yu Jingchun said bitterly. The corners of Yu Jingchun's mouth curled up into a bitter smile as he said, "After he came of age, something happened that changed him completely. It made him abandon his sword for the saber." "What happened?" Nie Tian frowned and could not help but be interested. "The extermination of the family." Yu Jingchun's face darkened. The Feng family that King Shang came from was a very large sword sect in the all-heaven sacred sword sect called the Sealed Sword Mansion. However, the Sealed Sword Mansion offended an unknown enemy, and a mysterious swordsman suddenly appeared and exterminated the entire Sealed Sword Mansion in one night. Back then, King Shang personally saw his parents and relatives die under the sword of that swordsman. That mysterious swordsman did not kill King Shang. Instead, he left something on him and left. After that, King Shang hated all swordsmen. He abandoned the sword for the saber and quickly became a famous genius in the all-heaven sacred world. After that, Yu Jingchun could not help but shake his head and sigh. It was indeed a pity for a genius like King Shang to abandon the sword for the saber. If he had persisted in the sword Dao back then, I'm afraid his current strength would be much more terrifying. Nie Tian's face darkened when he heard Yu Jingchun's words, and he frowned deeply. He did not expect that King Shang would have such a deep hatred for King Shang. It was no wonder that King Shang had looked at Jun Jianxing, Yu Jingchun, and even him with intense hatred. It seemed like the incident back then had completely changed King Shang. The mysterious swordsman that Yu Jingchun had mentioned was able to exterminate a sword sect all by himself. One could imagine how strong he was. The fact that that person didn't kill King Shang showed how arrogant he was. He was at ease letting King Shang live because he was not afraid that the latter would take revenge. I don't have much of a relationship with King Shang, but after exchanging blows with him several times, I can tell that he is not a cruel and bloodthirsty person. At this time, Yu Jingchun sighed and said, "But the things in this world are too torturous." Nie Tian nodded solemnly and did not say anything else. The king's funeral seemed arrogant, but if the same thing happened to someone else, they probably wouldn't be able to keep their cool. It's a pity for your friend. He had the chance to become a powerful swordsman. Yu Jingchun sighed again. "He'll be fine." Nie Tian smiled faintly and replied. Yu Jingchun was stunned for a moment, but he did not ask any questions. Next, Nie Tian and the others continued to compete. Soon, 3 days later, Nie Tian finished his 64th match. He was very lucky and did not encounter any powerful opponents. With a winning record of 64 matches, he perfectly entered the 3rd stage of the Hidden Dragon competition. With his current strength, only those martial artists on the Hidden Sky list could pose a threat to him. The other martial artists were no match for him at all. Nie Tian, congratulations on entering the third stage. At this time, a voice resounded in Nie Tian's mind, causing him to frown and his expression to change. This voice belonged to none other than Qi Xinu. Qi Xinu, you didn't appear just to congratulate me, right? Nie Tian smiled faintly and said in a cold tone, "You really want to remove the curse of bloody corpse on that little girl, right?" Qi Xinu's sinister voice was heard. It was extremely playful and said, "Let's talk." "All right," Nie Tian agreed. Then he sensed an aura and left by following it. Moments later, he left the vast cloud plaza and arrived at a remote place in the vast cloud sacred city. After his silhouette stopped, Xie Tianquang arrived right after. "Boss, I'm a bit worried about you," Xie Tianquang snickered and said to Nie Tian. Nie Tian faintly nodded. With Xie Tianquang here, he was indeed much more at ease. "Little kid, what are you afraid of? It's not like I will eat your boss." Just then, a sinister voice was heard, and Qi Xinu's silhouette appeared. "Qi Xinu, we didn't look for you, yet you came to us yourself." Xie Tianquang snickered. He stepped forward, and the power of thunder and lightning surged around his body. "Nie Tian, I didn't invite you here to fight." Qi Xinu ignored Xie Tianquang and said to Nie Tian. Nie Tian frowned and signaled Xie Tianquang to step down. The latter was a bit unwilling, but he still retreated to the side. "Qi Xinu, who cast the curse of blood corpse on my sister?" Nie Tian asked in a low and cold manner. If it wasn't because he needed to break the curse on Ye Yuro, he would have teamed up with Xie Tianquang to kill Qi Xinu. "I wasn't the one who cast the curse, but I can break it." Qi Xinu smiled faintly and said, "As for you, you have to trade something with me." "Humph," Nie Tianling chuckled and said, "Do you think I will still believe you?" Last time, he was tricked by Qi Xinu. Although he successfully saved Nie Yuro, he paid with Ni Jiaming's life. Therefore, he had to consider Qi Xinu's conditions again. "I'm a person who goes back on his words, but I believe that you are one who keeps your word." Qi Xinu smiled again and said, "I can give you the item to break the curse first. After that little girl recovers, you can give me the item. How about it?" Nie Tian frowned, and his expression slightly changed. Qing Qi had said that only the one who cast the curse could break it. Could Qi Xinu really do it? However, Qi Xinu's current attitude didn't seem to be a lie. "The item was given to me by the person who cast the curse. You can use it without worry." Qi Xinu could tell what Nie Tian was thinking and smiled. "The question now is, are you willing to use the reverse dragon soul to trade for your sister's life?" "It really is the reverse dragon soul." Nie Tian's eyes slightly froze. He had already guessed that Qi Xinu wanted the reverse dragon soul. However, the reverse dragon soul was formed after Ni Jiaming's death and was related to his rebirth, so how could Nie Tian give it up so easily? At this time, Qi Xinu suddenly spoke with a sinister smile. "The reverse dragon soul reversal is a narrow escape." After hearing these words, Nie Tian couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Chapter 4061. How do you know that the dragon reverse soul reversal has a slim chance of survival? Nie Tian's face darkened upon hearing Qi Xinu's words. Those were the words Ni Jiaming said before he died. How did Qi Xinu know about it? It seemed like Qi Xinu knew how to revive Ni Jiaming. "Humph," Qi Xinu sneered and said, "If I'm not mistaken, those are the words the Dragon Rebel Saint Lord told you before he died." Nie Tian's face darkened. He didn't respond, which was a tacit agreement. The Dragon Rebel Saint Lord has a good plan. He wants to revive the reverse dragon soul through you. Qi Xinu smiled playfully. Then, she changed the topic and said, "Don't you wonder why the Dragon Rebel Saint Lord trusts you so much?" "We're friends," Nie Tian answered in a deep voice. "Friends?" Qi Xinu sneered as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. "How much do you know about him? Do you know his real identity? Do you know his past? What if he's just using you?" Nie Tian's eyes darkened, and he said, Qi Xinu, you don't need to provoke me. In my eyes, you just want the reverse dragon soul." Nie Tian didn't know much about Ni Jiaming, but he believed that he was right about Ni Jiaming. "Humph," Chi Shinu sneered again and said, "Nye Tian, you don't have that many friends in this world of martial arts. You're young after all. Sometimes, what you see isn't the truth. What exactly do you want to say?" Nye Tian frowned and asked coldly, feeling a little impatient. "Are you really willing to give up your sister's life for someone you don't even know?" Chi Shinu paused for a while. Her dark eyes flickered and she asked coldly, "I won't give up Roer, but I will never agree to your request for the reverse dragon soul." Nye Tian frowned and said, "You can name other conditions." "Nye Tian, do you dare to bet?" Suddenly, Chi Shinu's eyes darkened as she coldly asked, "What are we betting on?" Nye Tian sensed that Chi Shinu's breath was fluctuating. His heart sank as he asked in surprise, "I'll bet on my own life, and you'll bet on the life of the Dragon Rebel Saint Lord. What do you think?" Chi Shinu's eyes shone with an evil cold light under the black robe. "What do you mean?" Nye Tian's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but feel nervous. If it was his own life, he would not be too nervous. However, if it was N.I. Jiaming's life, he panicked. "I am willing to give up my martial body and condense the Julie's soul." Chi Shinu paused, then slowly revealed his face under the black robe. His eyes were extremely greedy, and he said, "What you need to do is to merge Shinu's Julie soul with Dragon Rebel Saint Lord's reverse dragon soul to form the 9 and I souls. As for the two of us, it will depend on our own luck as to who can be reborn from the soul of the 9 and I. Julie soul, reverse dragon soul, 9 and I soul." Hearing Chi Shinu's words, Nye Tian's eyes trembled, and he was shocked. He did not expect Chi Shinu to be so crazy that he was willing to do such a crazy thing. Although he did not know what the Julie soul and the reverse dragon soul were, he could faintly feel that the two powers were closely related. This guy has the Julie soul. At this moment, the fat cat's voice was heard, and its face was extremely shocked. "Fat, do you know about the Julie soul?" Nye Tian's eyes trembled, and he asked in surprise. "In my memory, there is some description about the Julie soul, but it is not detailed." The fat cat nodded and said, "A long time ago, there was a nature-defying warrior in the Qi clan. His name was Qi Julie, and he was cruel. He awakened a nature-defying power in his body, and it was called the Julie soul. Qi Julie unified the Angel clan in a very short amount of time, and he became the first emperor of the Angel clan. Qi Julie was extremely ambitious. After unifying the Angel clan, he wanted to rule the entire all-heaven sacred world. With his own strength, he challenged the experts of the various clans and factions, and he quickly destroyed several first-rate factions at that time. When the other clans and factions saw Qi Julie's bravery, they banded together and agreed to fight him at the Demon Martial Mountain Range. Although Qi Julie fought bravely, there were too many experts from other factions. In the end, Qi Julie died at the Demon Martial Mountain Range, and his soul perished. However, Qi Julie's Julie soul was inherited from a Qi clan cultivator. Unfortunately, after Qi Julie, no one from the Qi clan was able to awaken the Julie soul. Who would have thought that Qi Shinu was a Qi clan cultivator who possessed the Julie soul? With that, the fat cat's eyes trembled, and it was obvious that she was extremely shocked. Nye Tian also furrowed his brows, and his face darkened. Although the fat cat only said a few words, he could feel the power of the Julie soul. A long time ago, the Qi clan cultivator, Qi Julie, was able to cause a huge commotion in the all-heaven sacred world because of the Julie soul. Qi Shinu possessed the Julie soul. Did this mean that he could become the second Qi Julie, or even more terrifying than the first Qi Julie? However, Nye Tian was still a little confused. What was the relationship between the Julie soul and the reverse dragon soul? Why did Qi Shinu want to fuse the Julie soul with the reverse dragon soul? The reverse dragon soul reversal, 9 out of 10 lives. At this moment, Qi Shinu seemed to have read Nye Tian's mind. His eyes darkened, and he said, "The next prophecy is that the Julie soul reversal will be doomed eternally. The reverse dragon soul reversal, 9 out of 10 lives. The Julie soul reversal will be doomed eternally." Nye Tian's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but be stunned. He was right. The Julie soul and the reverse dragon soul were really closely related. Nietan, if you want to resurrect the dragon rebel Saint Lord, you have to fuse the Julie soul with the reverse dragon soul. The corners of Qi Shinu's mouth twitched, and he said cold, "The dragon rebel Saint Lord made a decision the moment he met me. He was also gambling, but you were the one to finish his bet. You don't really think that he made the decision to die together with the demon Marshal 7 in desperation, do you?" Then, Qi Shinu smiled sinisterly. "You can't be that naive." Nietian's eyes narrowed, and his face darkened. He recalled everything that had happened before. When Ni Jiaming met Qi Shinu, he was indeed a little strange. Before going to the demon Marshal mountain range, Nietian saw the determination in Ni Jiaming's eyes. Could it be that Ni Jiaming had already made up his mind at that time? Nietian didn't have much contact with Ni Jiaming, but he knew that Ni Jiaming wasn't an impulsive person. Chapter 4062. Nietian recalled everything that had happened. His eyes trembled and his nerves were stretched taut. Nietian, the dragon rebel saint is not as simple as you think. Qi Shinu looked at Nietian and seemed to have guessed what he was thinking. He sneered and said, "You have no idea what the dragon rebel saint did back then. To him, the word friend is just a tool that he can use." Nietian's eyes suddenly grew grim as he said coldly, "Qi Shinu, how I look at people is my business. I don't need you to tell me." He had his own judgment on what kind of person Ni Jiaming was. Qi Shinu said so much because he wanted to achieve his goal. At this moment, Nietian finally realized how terrifying Qi Shinu was. Not only was Qi Shinu extremely talented and powerful, but her shrewdness was also not something ordinary people could compare to. If it weren't for the fact that Nietian was a tenacious person, he might have already been convinced by what he had just said. Nietian had already suffered a great loss from Qi Shinu, so he had to be cautious. Nietian had a feeling that perhaps Qi Shinu was like Ni Jiaming, an old monster who had been reincarnated. Humph! Qi Shinu laughed and threw a medicine bottle over. "What is this?" Nietian was startled and asked with a frown. "Something to save your sister." Qi Shinu laughed and said, "Nietian, I will let you make the choice. You decide if you want to bet or not." Nietian frowned and went blank for a moment. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly exploded from Qi Shinu's body, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Nietian's eyes trembled. He suddenly understood, and his expression changed. Bang! The next second, before he could react, there was a muffled sound and blood appeared in front of him. Nietian's expression flickered with astonishment, and he was instantly rendered speechless. Not even in his dreams did he think that Qi Shinu would self-destruct right in front of him. After a while, the blood in the air slowly dissipated and a black swirl appeared before Nietian. When Nietian saw the black vortex, his eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he cried out in alarm, "Ninely soul!" Qi Shinu giving up his martial body and condensing the soul of Julie was beyond his expectations. After a long while, Nietian took a step forward and held the soul in his hand. At this moment, he felt an incomparably enormous aura that caused his soul to tremble. This aura is no weaker than the reverse dragon soul. Nietian was speechless. "B-boss, is this guy crazy?" At this moment, Xie Tianquang, who had been in a daze for a long time, walked over and stared at Nietian in shock. He couldn't even speak properly. He originally thought that there would be an earth-shattering battle between him and Qi Shinu. He didn't think that Qi Shinu would self-destruct in front of him. He really suspected that Qi Shinu was out of his mind. Nietian ignored Shi Qianqing and took a deep breath to force himself to calm down. Then, he sensed the aura of the soul of Julie and tried to find the similarities between the two. But strangely, he couldn't sense any similarities between the two. It was as if the soul of Julie and the reverse dragon soul were two completely different powers that might even clash with each other. Can these two powers really fuse together? Nietian took out the reverse dragon soul and compared it with the soul of Julie with a frown. Half a day later, he stored the soul of Julie and the reverse dragon soul in different places. Although he felt that it would be difficult to fuse the soul of Julie and the reverse dragon soul, it would be terrible if they did. Needless to say, Qi Shinu was truly insane. He actually self-destructed and gave the soul of Julie to Nie Tian. Wasn't he afraid that Nie Tian would destroy the soul of Julie? Nie Tian, this guy's thoughts are quite deep. At this moment, Fat Cat spoke. I feel that what he said before wasn't to sow discord between you and I, but to test how important he is to you. What do you mean? Nie Tian frowned in confusion. Fat Cat's expression slightly changed as a strange light surged in his eyes. I feel that in order to resurrect Ni jamming, we must fuse the soul of Julie and the reverse dragon soul together. Nie Tian frowned again as he vaguely understood something. Qi Shinu must know that Ni jamming could only be resurrected from the soul of Julie. The soul of Julie and the reverse dragon soul could only be formed by fusing the soul of Julie and the reverse dragon soul together. This way, Qi Shinu and Ni jamming would have the chance to be reborn. He was certain that Nie Tian valued Ni jamming greatly and would definitely resurrect Ni jamming, which was why he self-destructed. If this was the case, then Qi Shinu's schemes were truly deep and terrifying. His actions were also incomparably crazy. He would do anything to achieve his goal. Even so, I can't easily fuse the soul of Julie and the reverse dragon soul. Nie Tian frowned and said in a deep voice. Before figuring out the relationship between the soul of Julie and the reverse dragon soul, Nie Tian would not easily fuse the two powers. After all, this concerned Ni jamming's life. From Qi Shinu's words, it seemed that after the soul of Julie was formed between him and Ni jamming, only one could be resurrected. Reverse dragon soul reincarnation, 9 deaths and 1 survival. 9 soul reincarnation, eternal damnation. Perhaps Ni jamming had really made up his mind. Ni jamming and Qi Shinu, reverse dragon soul and Julie's soul. This was a fate-defying gamble, yet the final decision fell into the hands of Nie Tian. It was quite funny just thinking about it. Boss, what are you thinking about? Seeing Nie Tian's strange expression, Xie Tianquang couldn't help but step forward and say, "Did that guy's suicide scare you, silly? Am I that easily scared?" The corner of Nie Tian's lips twitched as he couldn't help but chuckle. "That's true." Xie Tianquang laughed wildly. "That guy died just like that, leaving behind a ball of power. How strange." Nie Tian looked at Xie Tianquang, laughed, and said, "Little Quang, you can't say a word about what happened today to anyone. Got it?" Although Xie Tianquang's mind had recovered, he was only 12 years old after all. It was normal for him to not understand many things. The soul of Julie and the reverse dragon soul were clearly not ordinary items, so he must not let anyone else know. "Boss, don't worry, I won't say anything," Xie Tianquang guaranteed with a laugh. Chapter 4063. 1 Yuan Pavilion, inside a room. Senior Qin Qi. "How is it?" Nie Tian looked at Qin Qi with slightly trembling eyes, appearing a little nervous. After he returned to 1 Yuan Pavilion, he obviously couldn't directly use the antidote given by Qi Shinu on Ye Yuro. Instead, he first had Qin Qi examine it. After Qin Qi received the bottle, he examined it for a long time. In the end, he didn't speak for a long time, making Nie Tian even more anxious. The composition of this pill is a bit complicated. I can be sure that it has an effect on the curse of corpses, but there is an aura within it that I have never seen before. As Qin Qi spoke, his brows furrowed, and he continued, "I'm a little worried that there might be something strange about this pill." Nie Tian's brows furrowed. His face was gloomy, and he didn't speak for a long time. The composition of the pill was uncertain. Rashly letting Nie Yuro take it was obviously unwise. But now, Qi Shinu was dead. This meant that the trail to find the person who cast the curse was completely cut off. Nie Yuro couldn't hold on for too long, so the situation was not optimistic. It seemed that there was only one path in front of Nie Tian, and that was to take the risk. Qin Qi looked at Nie Tian, waiting for the latter's decision. "Senior Qin Qi, use the pill." Nietion hesitated for a long time and finally made the decision to use the pill given by Qi Shinu. He had no other choice but to believe in Qi Shinu. Qing Qi nodded and said, "I will divide the pill into several portions and let her take it slowly." "Thank you, Senior." Nietion bowed slightly and was very grateful. Qing Qi smiled faintly and didn't say much. Following that, Nietion didn't continue to stay and immediately returned to Vast Cloud Plaza. He had completed the second stage of the elimination round, and his record was 64 wins, firmly entering the third stage. At this time, the elimination round had reached its final stage. Most people had finished their matches. Nietion casually observed the matches on the stage and didn't see any martial artists worthy of his attention. Soon, 3 days had passed, and the second stage of the competition had ended. The rankings of all the warriors were out, and Nietion was ranked 36th in the winners group. Although he had won all 64 matches, he was not the only one with an undefeated record. Moreover, all the martial artists had an estimated ranking. Because Nietion was not famous, he could only be ranked 36th. Of course, he didn't care about his ranking. The key was that he had successfully entered the third stage. The top 1,000 martial artists of the winners group, together with the top 200 martial artists of the losers group, formed the lineup for the third stage of the group round-robin battle. In the third stage of the competition, the 1,200 warriors were divided into 4 groups according to their accumulated points. Each group had 300 warriors, and they would fight one by one to determine the top 16. The 4 groups added together would make up the top 64. Nietion was placed in the 4th group. He would have to fight another 8 matches, and each win would earn him a point. If he could rank in the top 16, he would be able to enter the 4th stage. Very soon, Zhou Yu's figure appeared. He had an easygoing look on his face as his gaze swept across the crowd, and he announced in a loud voice, "Everyone, the second stage of the competition has ended. Congratulations to the warriors who entered the third stage. Those who didn't enter the third stage, don't be disheartened. Those ranked in the top 10,000 will have the opportunity to enter the 5 great academies." As he spoke, his gaze swept across the crowd, and a fiery light shone in his eyes. The crowd discussed animatedly, and those who entered the third stage all had smiles on their faces. Basically, the warriors who entered the third stage, as long as there were no accidents, could enter the 5 great academies. Next, the warriors who entered the third stage will have half a day's rest. Following that, Zhou Yu spoke again. In half a day, the third stage of the group round-robin battle will officially begin. When the crowd heard Zhou Yu's words, their eyes involuntarily trembled, and there was an uproar. No one thought that the third stage would actually start so soon. Nietion smiled faintly, as if he didn't feel anything. He felt that it was not bad to start the competition directly, and it would save time. However, he was still a little worried about his current strength. After all, none of the opponents he faced were weaker than him. "Everyone, take this time to rest." Zhou Yu faintly smiled with a playful look on his face. The reason why the third stage of the competition only gave the warriors half a day's time to recover was to see the quality of these warriors' martial physiques. A warrior's martial physique could, to a large extent, determine a warrior's talent and aptitude. The crowd of warriors reacted and did not dare to waste any more time. They immediately sat down cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. Half a day passed in the blink of an eye. The silhouettes of Zhou Yu and the others once again appeared high up in the sky. This time, there was a young warrior standing next to him. He was dressed in white, and he was as sharp as lightning, giving off a feeling that he was showing off his abilities. This person is not simple. Nietion looked at the young warrior, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble as his heart trembled. He could not sense the cultivation of this warrior in white, but he could sense a sharp aura from the latter's body. This aura was even more terrifying than Qi Shinu's aura. When the warriors below saw the warrior in white, their eyes couldn't help but tremble, and they began to discuss among themselves. "Who is this guy? His aura is so terrifying. He looks very young, about our age. Could he be here to participate in the competition? Are you kidding me?" It's already the third stage, and he's only here to participate in the competition now. This is not in line with the 5 Academies recruitment rules. The crowd was in an uproar, and it was obvious that they were attracted by the warrior in white. The warrior in white's eyes were cold and solemn, and there was nothing unusual on his face. It was as if he did not see the people below him at all. At this time, a figure appeared beside Nyetian and said with a wry smile, "I didn't expect this guy to come. Do you know him?" Nyetian turned to look at Yu Jingshun and asked with a frown, "I've only seen him once, but that time was enough to make me remember it for the rest of my life." Yu Jingshun's eyes trembled slightly as he looked at the warrior in white from afar, and there was a look of worship in his eyes. Nyetian's eyes couldn't help but narrow, and his heart trembled. Yu Jingshun was a top genius, and there was no need to talk about his arrogance. However, in front of this person, he actually had a look of worship which was incredible. There was no doubt that in Yu Jingshun's heart, the strength and talent of this warrior in white were far superior to his. Yu Jingshun was ranked in the top 10 of the Hidden Sky list, so what kind of person could make him feel inferior? Chapter 4064. The Hidden Sky Leader. Nyetian's eyes widened when he heard those words. Could it be that this cultivator in white was ranked first on the Hidden Sky ranking? After a while, Yu Jingshun withdrew his gaze and looked at Nyetian with a somewhat gloomy expression. He said, "I originally thought that the Hidden Dragon battle this time would be a fierce battle for the position of Martial King. I didn't expect that Zhu Shi would also come." "What do you mean?" Nyetian frowned and was stunned. Zhu Shi is ranked first on the Hidden Sky ranking. Since he is here, the position of the martial leader will definitely belong to him. Yu Jingshun sighed and shook his head helplessly. Is he really that strong? Nyetian frowned again and asked in a deep voice. As the first on the Hidden Sky ranking, Zhu Shi's strength was unquestionable. However, from Yu Jingshun's words, it seemed like Zhu Shi's arrival meant that he would be the martial leader of the 5 Academies. Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? Nyetian, do you know that Zhu Shi has a nickname? Yu Jingshun's lips curled into a smile as he asked. I don't know. Nyetian shook his head. Fu Tian. Yu Jingshun's eyes trembled, and he said these 3 words. What do you mean? Nyetian's eyes narrowed, and he asked. Even the heavens have to bow down to him, Yu Jingshun said excitedly. However, Nyetian's face darkened, and he did not deny it. Zhu Shi was the Hidden Sky leader. It was fine if the geniuses of the all-heaven sacred world had to bow down to him. It was a little exaggerated to say that the heavens had to bow down to him. Nyetian, do you know how old Zhu Shi is now? Yu Jingshun could tell that Nyetian was upset, and he asked with a smile. How old? Nyetian frowned and asked. Only 200 years old. Yu Jingshun nodded and said. Nyetian's eyes narrowed as he asked. What about his cultivation base? I don't know. Yu Jingshun shook his head and said, Zhu Shi is a legend in the all-heaven sacred world. The other hidden heaven first leaders all reached the top when they were close to 1,000 years old. As for him, he was already the leader of the hidden heavens before he was even 100 years old. Nyetian's eyes trembled and he was shocked. The martial artists on the Hidden Sky list were all young martial artists under 1,000 years old. Zhu Shi, who was not even 100 years old, had reached the top of the Hidden Sky list. It was indeed terrifying. I've only seen Zhu Shi once. At that time, he was exchanging blows with a martialist. With just one move, he completely defeated that martialist. Yu Jingshun spoke once more. He seemed to have recalled the scene from that day, and his eyes trembled with yearning. Nyetian frowned, his expression a little strange. Defeating his opponent with a single move, was it really that shocking? Zhu Shi's opponent was ranked second on the Hidden Sky list, Xiao Wanjie, the devil son of the devil race. Yu Jingshun looked at Nyetian in shock. Nyetian's eyes trembled violently, and he could not help but be stunned for a moment. He had not expected that the person Zhu Shi defeated with a single move would be Xiao Wanjie. Xiao Wanjie was the devil son of the devil race, and his strength could be said to be abnormal. Nyetian had seen how terrifying Xiao Wanjie was with his own eyes, and there was an existence in Xiao Wanjie's body that was comparable to a 9th-level chaos beast, Night Elephant. Such a terrifying person was actually defeated by Zhu Shi with a single move. One could imagine how strong Zhu Shi was. No wonder Yu Jingshun was so shocked. According to the rumors, when Zhu Shi fought with all the Hidden Sky list martial artists, he only used one move. Yu Jingshun was still immersed in shock as he said, only one person made Zhu Shi use a second move. Who was it? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he could not help but ask. The former leader of the Hidden Sky list and the current second on the Hidden Sky list, Chen Qinbian. Yu Jingshun said with some regret. Actually, Chen Qinbian was also a peerless genius, but it was a pity that he met Zhu Shi. Why didn't Chen Qinbian attend the recruitment of the 5 academies this time? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he asked. After Chen Qinbian lost to Zhu Shi, he disappeared. No one knows where he went, and some people even said that he could not bear the humiliation of being defeated, so he committed suicide. Yu Jingshun laughed bitterly and said, I met Chen Qinbian a few times in the past, and that fellow was an interesting person. The corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, but he did not say anything else. The appearance of the Hidden Sky list leader, Zhu Shi, had made this hidden dragon battle even more difficult. Even an expert like Xiao Wanjie had been defeated by Zhu Shi with a single move. His strength was simply unimaginable. In front of Zhu Shi, Yu Jingqin had completely given up on fighting for the title of Martial Kuei. He had even concluded that Zhu Shi was this time's Martial Kuei. Nie Tian had originally thought that his strongest opponents would be Xiao Wanjie and the others. He had not expected that an almost undefeatable existence would appear out of nowhere. Everyone, please quiet down. At this moment, Zhou Yu spoke up and waved his hand slightly. Immediately, the crowd quieted down. Young Master Zhu, please inform everyone. Zhou Yu smiled faintly. He seemed to be extremely careful in front of Zhu Shi. I am Zhu Shi, and I'm here to participate in the Hidden Dragon Battle. Zhu Shi took a step forward and said calmly, but he seemed extremely domineering. As soon as his voice faded, the crowd immediately burst into an uproar. Heavens, he's Zhu Shi. Zhu Shi. Could he be the legendary Heaven Subduer, the Hidden Sky list leader, Zhu Shi? Who else could it be other than Heaven Subduer? The Hidden Sky list leader is actually here. This is unbelievable. Everyone discussed among themselves, and their gazes towards Zhu Shi were filled with shock, fear, and admiration. Most people had never seen Zhu Shi before. However, his name resounded like thunder in their ears. The mighty Heaven Subduer, the famous hidden dragon leader, had actually come to participate in the recruitment of the 5 academies. This was something that no one had expected. Everyone, a while later, Zhou Yu took a step forward and spoke loudly again. Young Master Zhu will choose a cultivator from each of the 4 groups to fight. If he loses a battle, he will be directly eliminated. Everyone's eyes trembled, and they immediately became speechless. With Zhu Shi's strength, how could he lose? Of course, if anyone is confident in their own strength, they can challenge young Master Zhu, Zhou Yu said with a smile. Everyone was stunned once again, and they all kept quiet out of fear. Who would be tired of living and take the initiative to challenge Zhu Shi? Don't worry, everyone. Young Master Zhu will not take up a spot in the top 16 of the 4 groups. Also, whoever fights against young Master Zhu will receive a point regardless of the outcome. Zhou Yu glanced past everyone and said, however, if young Master Zhu wins all 4 battles, he will become the pending Martial King of the 5 academies. Pending Martial King of the 5 academies? What does that mean? Everyone was stunned and could not help but exclaim. Zhou Yu smiled and said, the pending Martial King of the 5 academies means that young Master Zhu will no longer participate in the 4th stage of the Hidden Dragon Battle and will directly become a seated candidate for the Martial King. In the next stage of the Hidden Dragon Battle, the final winner will have the chance to challenge young Master Zhu. If he wins, he will become the Martial King of the 5 academies. If he loses, young Master Zhu will become the Martial King of the 5 academies. Zhou Yu's words stunned everyone, and they could not react for a long time. Chapter 4065. Everyone looked at Zhu Shi in the sky. The shock in their hearts was clearly written on their faces. A cultivator, and a young one at that, had actually made the 5 academies concede to him and set the rules of the competition for him. This itself was an affirmation of his strength. It was a supreme glory. However, everyone felt that it was normal. After all, in their eyes, Zhu Shi was someone with strength. If he did not die prematurely, he was destined to become a peak expert that could influence the entire all-heaven sacred world. The 5 academies had seen this, which was why they were so tolerant. Looks like this person will be the greatest obstacle on my path, Nietian thought to himself as he looked at Zhu Shi from afar. Zhu Shi's identity and status were very special. It was equivalent to entering the finals of the Hidden Dragon battle directly. If Nietian could not reach the final step of the Hidden Dragon battle, he would not even have the right to challenge Zhu Shi. Is there anyone who wants to challenge young Master Zhu? Zhou Yu glanced at the crowd. His eyes flickered with a strange light as he spoke in a provocative tone. His provocation was clearly to provoke the crowd. However, as soon as he spoke, the entire Haoyun Square fell silent. There was no sound at all. Wasn't challenging Fu Tian seeking death? Apart from a fool or a madman, who would challenge Zhu Shi? Is there no one? Zhu Shi spoke. He did not look at the cultivators below at all. Instead, he looked at the sky as if he was talking to himself. Then I'll choose my own opponent. I'll go. Just as the sound of his voice faded, a low-sounding voice rang out as a silhouette appeared. With a single step, he soared up into the skies as ghostly chi gushed out from his body like a tempest, causing the space around him to rumble and rumble unceasingly. Niet Tian's eyes narrowed. He could not help but change his expression when he saw the figure. He smiled and said, "It's him, the demon heir." Everyone's expression changed when they saw the person, and they exclaimed in unison. No one expected the person to appear was the demon heir, Xiao Wanjie. Everyone hated and feared Xiao Wanjie. Xiao Wanjie was cruel and bloodthirsty, but his strength was superb. Among the martial artists present, there were very few who were his match. Last time, it was thanks to the Heaven Saintess Niet Tian and the others that they managed to control it. But now, Xiao Wanjie actually wanted to challenge Zhu Shi. This surprised everyone. In the next moment, everyone looked at Xiao Wanjie with blazing eyes. It was obvious that they were looking forward to the next battle. Many people even hoped that Xiao Wanjie would die at Zhu Shi's hands. The Devil Sun cultivates 10,000 tribulations. Zhu Shi's eyes narrowed, and he finally looked at Xiao Wanjie. He sneered twice as if he was looking at a clown. Zhu Shi, this Devil Sun has been waiting for you for a long time. You are the opponent this Devil Sun is looking forward to the most. Xiao Wanjie's eyes were filled with killing intent as he locked on Zhu Shi. Opponent. The corner of Zhu Shi's mouth twitched as he sneered. Do you think you're worthy? Everyone's eyes trembled. Even though they were separated by tens of thousands of meters, they could still feel Zhu Shi's arrogance and domineering aura. In his eyes, Xiao Wanjie wasn't worthy to be his opponent. But Xiao Wanjie was ranked 3rd on the Hidden Sky ranking. If he wasn't worthy to be Zhu Shi's opponent, then who was? Zhu Shi, you are too arrogant. Xiao Wanjie's eyes darkened as he roared like a mad beast. Instantly, the ghostly energy around his body became violent. Waves of energy soared into the sky as if they wanted to devour everything. In the past, he fought against Zhu Shi, but was defeated by the latter in one move. He no longer had the strength to fight back. The humiliation of this battle was engraved in his heart, and he would never forget it. Now, he was no longer the Xiao Wanjie of the past. He felt that he had the strength to fight against Zhu Shi. But Zhu Shi still looked down on him. How could he not be angry? Xiao Wanjie, I defeated you in one move back then. Today, I will defeat you in one move as well. Zhu Shi spoke in a low voice. Immediately, an invisible wave of energy appeared around his body and expanded in all directions. Instantly, everyone felt a bone-chilling coldness engulf the entire sky, making them feel as if they had fallen into an ice house. This energy is terrifying. Nietion's eyes trembled as his heart trembled. The coldness in the air made him shiver uncontrollably. This level of coldness seemed to be able to freeze people's souls. Nietion had seen many ice-attributed energies before, but none of them could compare to Zhu Shi's energy. Even Emo, who had opened his 4 pairs of demonic wings, was far from being able to compare to this. Black Lotus swallows the heavens. Xiao Wanjie's eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. He let out a low roar, and the surging ghost energy around his body condensed into a black demon lotus. Suddenly, a monstrous power appeared, making him look like a devil that had walked out of hell, and he was able to devour the heavens. Immediately, the surroundings darkened. Frightening ripples from the spirit formation spread in all directions, causing everyone's hearts to tremble and their eyes to tremble. This kind of enchantment again. Nietion's eyes trembled and his heart was in shock. Back then, when Xiao Jie defeated the Sky Saintess, he used the Black Lotus. Now, against Zhu Shi, Xiao Jie directly used his ultimate move. Clearly, he wanted to defeat his enemy in one move. Moreover, Nietion could clearly feel that Xiao Jie's energy was much stronger than it was a few days ago. So terrifying. Everyone's eyes trembled as they retreated. However, Zhu Shi, who was enveloped by the ghostly energy, had a cold expression. It was as if everything around him was nothing. Die! Just then, Xiao Jie roared like a beast and slammed his palm down. Instantly, a violent black lotus appeared in the sky and crazily pressed towards Zhu Shi. Ice breaks the heavens. Zhu Shi's eyes slightly froze, and then he spoke coldly. Instantly, a bone-chilling aura exuded from his body. Then, a blade of ice appeared in the air. It was extremely cold and sharp, as if it could tear apart everything in the world. In an instant, everyone felt a shiver that could seal their souls in ice. They all gasped, and the shock in their hearts was at its peak. Zhu Shi's face was expressionless, but every movement he made seemed to have the power to suppress everything. Bang! In the next instant, the 2 ultimate techniques collided, causing the surrounding space to tremble. After which, the gigantic black lotus actually exploded. Under the gaze of countless eyes, a sharp ice blade sliced through the air, attacking Xiao Wanjie. Cold. Chapter 4066. Whoosh! High up in the sky, an extremely cold blade of ice slashed across. It was like a sharp blade from the heavens, and even the void let out a cracking sound. Pooh! In the next moment, the air was filled with the smell of blood. Xiao Wanjie's body trembled slightly. Then, like a kite with a broken string, he fell straight down. The shocking scene caused everyone's expression to freeze, and they were all stunned. "Your Highness!" Just at this time, a scream rang out. A figure flew out and caught Xiao Wanjie. "It's that guy again." Nietion's eyes sank slightly when he saw that it was the young master of Myriad Sound Demon Palace, Gong Yuzigui. Back when Nietion defeated Xiao Wanjie, it was Gong Yuzigui who appeared and protected Xiao Wanjie. At this moment, Gong Yuzigui appeared again. I'm fine." Xiao Wanjie suddenly woke up and shouted in joy. It turned out that only one of his arms had been cut off by the ice blade, and he had fainted from the shock. When everyone saw that Xiao Wanjie had woken up, their eyes trembled with disappointment. It was obvious that with Zhu Shi's strength, he could easily kill Xiao Wanjie, but he didn't do so. After a while, Xiao Wanjie calmed down and asked Zhu Shi, "Why didn't you kill me? You don't deserve to die by my hands." Zhu Shi said coldly. His entire person seemed incomparably cold, like a 10,000-year-old iceberg. Xiao Wanjie's eyes trembled. He wanted to say something, but his blood qi suddenly surged, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was the dignified devil son of the demon race, a martial artist ranked 3rd on the Hidden Sky list, and a ferocious person who regarded human life as nothing more than grass. But today, he was said to be a scum who felt that it was a shame to even kill him. How could he not be angry? However, it was useless for him to be angry because Zhu Shi was too strong. He was not someone he could fight against at all. Everyone's eyes trembled. If it was anyone else who said Zhu Shi's words, they would definitely think that they were afraid of Xiao Wanjie and didn't dare to kill him. But when he said it, his aura was boundless, domineering, and cold. Everyone, the first challenger has failed. Is there anyone else who wishes to challenge young Master Zhu? At this moment, Zhou Yu once again opened his mouth as he looked at the crowd below with a solemn expression. Although the battle, just now, was decided by a single move, he was still frightened out of his wits. He had never met Zhu Shi before, so he did not trust the latter's strength. He always felt that the latter was not as strong as the rumors said. But after personally witnessing Zhu Shi defeat Xiao Wanjie in one move, he completely believed that Zhu Shi was a heaven-defying genius. If such a figure could be pulled into the heavenly Dao Martial Palace, given enough time, the heavenly Dao Martial Palace would surely become a super academy that the other 4 academies could only dream of. Zhou Yu even felt that when Zhu Shi fully matured, he would have the ability to control the sacred world. It was no wonder that Zhu Shi was able to force the 5 great academies to give in to him. Obviously, all 5 academies wanted a rope in Zhu Shi. However, it was still unknown which academy Zhu Shi would enter in the end. As Zhou Yu's words fell, the entire place fell into a deathly silence. Even Xiao Wanjie was defeated by Zhu Shi in one move. Who else would dare to challenge Zhu Shi? Wasn't that just looking for trouble? Since that's the case, young Master Zhu, please choose your opponent. Zhou Yu had already expected this scene. He looked at Zhu Shi and smiled. Zhu Shi nodded slightly and looked at the 4 groups below. Wherever his gaze landed, everyone intentionally avoided him. Many even lowered their heads. At this time, Zhu Shi suddenly discovered that there was a cultivator who was not afraid of his gaze. Instead, the cultivator was looking straight at him without the slightest hint of fear in his eyes. It's that silver-haired cultivator. Zhu Shi's eyes narrowed as he spoke in a low voice. The corner of Nie Tian's lips curled up. He couldn't help but shake his head and take a step forward. This guy. When the crowd saw a figure walking out, their eyes widened. Many people recognized Nie Tian and couldn't help but exclaim. Although Nie Tian wasn't famous in the Hidden Dragon competition, he had defeated Xiao Wanjie and shone brilliantly in the ancestral grounds of the ancient sacred. Therefore, many people remembered him. However, most people felt that Nie Tian's strength was limited and his actual combat ability shouldn't be too strong. Zhu Shi picking such an opponent made people feel that it was a little too casual. Nie Tian. When the Saintess of Heaven saw that the person who stood out was Nie Tian, she couldn't help but frown and exclaim in her heart. Morishire was also surprised, and his expression was a little strange. He knew that Nie Tian was strong and even had the ability to compete for the title of the martial leader of the 5 spiritual houses. However, before Zhu Shi, Nie Tian was still too weak. Nie Tian moved and arrived in the air, facing Zhu Shi coldly. You have one chance. Zhu Shi glanced at Nie Tian, as if he had sensed something. A strange expression appeared on his face, but he still looked as cold as ever as he said arrogantly, "If you can get within 1,000 meters of me with one move, you'll win." Nie Tian frowned, and his eyes flickered with excitement. It seemed that he had gained a huge advantage this time. Zhu Shi was very strong, and his personality was extremely arrogant. He was confident that he could stop Nie Tian from getting within 1,000 meters of him. His arrogance was indeed shocking. All right. Nie Tian's eyes froze, and he agreed. Sword aura surged out of his body, and a sharp aura spread out. There was a tearing sound in the air. Right now, Nie Tian was already a sword cultivator of the 9th level of the Saint Realm. His level of swordsmanship had far surpassed his martial arts level. After his breakthrough in swordsmanship, this was the first time he had used his true strength. He knew that this was the best chance for him to defeat Zhu Shi. If he could defeat Zhu Shi in the challenge, it would be equivalent to directly eliminating Zhu Shi. This would undoubtedly remove the biggest obstacle on his path to becoming a martial leader. This guy's sword aura is really shocking. Yu Jingqian looked at Nie Tian from afar, and his eyes trembled slightly. He was extremely shocked. Nie Tian's sword aura actually made him feel threatened. His level of swordsmanship far surpassed Nie Tian's. From this, it could be seen that Nie Tian's swordsmanship was strong. This is interesting. Zhu Shi could feel the sword aura coming from the void. He could not help but squint and twitch the corner of his mouth. He did not expect Nie Tian's swordsmanship to be so shocking. However, he did not panic. In his opinion, Nie Tian's strength was only interesting and did not pose any threat to him. Die! Right at this moment, Nie Tianling suddenly shouted and his body moved. He stabbed out with his sword and endless sword aura condensed. A huge sword shadow appeared and charged toward Zhu Shi. Everyone's eyes widened and their nerves tightened. They did not even blink for fear of missing out on anything. Ice, heaven-sealing step. Right at this moment, Zhu Shi's lips twitched and he took a step forward. Suddenly, a huge and boundless force of ice appeared and spread out in all directions like raging waves. In the next moment, a terrifying scene happened. Chapter 4067. High up in the sky, the power of coldness rolled like a raging wave. Everywhere it passed, it froze everything. In an instant, an invisible wall of ice formed around Zhu Shi. Everyone felt the coldness in the air and couldn't help but gasp. The two of them retreated again. Zhu Shi's strength was truly too terrifying. That kind of ice-cold power was actually able to freeze even space. Buzz! At the same time, a sword howl resounded out. It was clear and intense, and it seemed to possess the might to pierce through the clouds and split rocks. An enormous sword image was like a primordial wild beast as it smashed down toward Zhu Shi. Bang! In the next moment, a muffled explosion was heard. The sword's shadow hit the invisible wall of ice, and cracks appeared in the air. It was as if time itself was being torn apart. Buzz! But what followed was a deep roar. The huge sword shadow was under strong resistance, and it suddenly slowed down. It could only approach Zhu Shi with great difficulty. The power of this ice wall is so strong. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he was shocked. He didn't expect the seemingly weak ice wall to be so terrifying. The power of his sword was enough to split a mountain, but it couldn't penetrate the ice wall. However, he did not give up. Sword intent gushed out from his body like a landslide. Suddenly, the sword light on the sword's shadow shone brightly. Then, cracks appeared on the huge ice wall. The entire ice wall seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Zhu Shi saw this, and he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. In his opinion, Nie Tian couldn't be so strong. With your strength, it's really not bad to be able to explode with such terrifying power. Zhu Shi's eyes trembled slightly. Then, he said, but it's a pity that you met Fu Tian. As soon as he finished speaking, an even more terrifying power of coldness appeared in the air. It was like an invisible wave of air that spread in all directions. At that moment, Nie Tian felt the power of coldness coming towards him, and it instantly enveloped him. In an instant, ice crystals appeared all over his body. Even the meridians in his body began to circulate more slowly under the influence of this extremely cold energy. How could this be? Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he exclaimed in his heart. He had never imagined that Zhu Shi's cold energy would actually be so terrifying. From 1,000 meters away, it could actually freeze his meridians. Boom! However, in the next moment, Nie Tian unleashed the power of the stars in his body, forcibly breaking through the cold power shrouding him. The sky sword in his hand once again pressed forward, intending to break through the invisible ice wall in front of him. Bang! Crack, crack, crack. Immediately after, the invisible ice wall was attacked, and with an explosive sound, it began to crack again. Everyone was shocked when they saw the scene in the sky. No one would have thought that Nie Tian could actually hold on to this step. The clash between the two was much more exciting than he had imagined. Right at this moment, Zhu Shi's face suddenly sank, and his eyes surged with a ghastly glow. His prestige didn't allow anyone to challenge it. Nie Tian had actually threatened him twice. This was something that he could not tolerate. Boom! In the next moment, he took a step forward, and instantly, a huge wave of cold energy appeared. It passed through the invisible ice wall and headed straight for Nyetian. Nyetian, watch out! Little fat cat suddenly sensed something, and its eyes trembled as it cried out. At this moment, Nyetian felt a strong, threatening aura that made his soul shiver. In the next moment, before Nyetian could react, his entire body was instantly sealed in ice. Even his 9 dragon veins were frozen. At this moment, Nyetian's divine sense quivered. He saw that on his dragon veins, there were dragon-shaped runes. They were bright and dazzling, giving off a terrifying feeling. It was as if the runes contained endless power. When the runes were connected together, they formed a complete trace of the ancestral dragon. Previously, when Nyetian met progenitor Wuming of the 7 fiend abyssal dragons, the latter had helped him awaken one of the traces of the ancestral dragon on his dragon veins. Due to the awakening of the traces of the ancestral dragon, Nyetian was able to awaken the chi of the dragon herding, which resulted in a qualitative change in the power of the dragon chi. He did not expect to see the traces of the ancestral dragon all of a sudden. It was too strange. At this time, Nyetian suddenly let out a cry of astonishment. An image appeared in his mind. It seemed to be a space of dragon veins. The 9 dragon veins were like pillars of ice, and there were many sparkling and translucent dragon symbols branded on them. The majestic and vigorous aura they exuded was incomparably terrifying. He was utterly shocked. Following this, Nyetian's eyes flickered as he realized something. He let out a cry of surprise and was momentarily speechless. If he wasn't mistaken, the dragon-shaped runes were the traces of the ancestral dragon. Although the dragon-shaped runes were slightly different from the traces of the ancestral dragon, there was no mistaking the aura they emitted. What exactly was going on? Why would he see such an image all of a sudden? It was obvious that the traces of the ancestral dragon did not belong to him. Could it be Zhu Shi's? Was Zhu Shi from the dragon tribe? Upon having this thought, Nyetian's eyes flickered with astonishment. The astonishment in his heart was indescribable. Bang! In the next instant, Nyetian suddenly felt a terrifying force being unleashed from his body, which helped him break free from the seal of the icy chi. In the blink of an eye, the seal on his meridians was broken. A formidable aura burst out from his meridians, causing the surrounding space to tremble slightly. How was this possible? At that instant, Zhu Shi exclaimed in astonishment as he seemed to have sensed something too. He did not expect Nyetian to break free from the seal of the icy chi. In that instant, he also saw an image of the traces of the ancestral dragon flashing in his mind. He could not believe that Nyetian was in possession of the traces of the ancestral dragon. The traces of the ancestral dragon represented the talent of the dragon meridians. Nyetian was not from the dragon tribe, so how could he possess the traces of the ancestral dragon? Furthermore, the traces of the ancestral dragon that he saw just now actually made him feel a strong sense of threat. How is this possible? At that moment, Nyetian became cold. He stood in the sky with a slightly disappointed expression. He was still unable to grasp the opportunity just now and was defeated by Zhu Shi. However, the image that had just appeared was too strange, and he still had lingering fears even now. Although that image only lasted for an instant, he clearly saw that there were 3 traces of the ancestral dragon awakened on the 9 dragon meridians. 3 traces of the ancestral dragon. No wonder Zhu Shi was so strong. There were a total of 9 traces of the ancestral dragon in Nyetian's body, but he had only awakened one. Chapter 4068. Zhu Shi's face was so dark it looked like it was about to drip blood. His eyes flashed with cold light. In that instant, he and Nyetian had actually clashed. He was very sure that what he saw was Nyetian's dragon vein. He could not believe that Nyetian, a non-dragon, had such a powerful dragon vein, and on it there were 9 marks of the ancestral dragon. He had only awakened one temporarily. How could a non-dragon have a mark of the ancestral dragon? How could a non-dragon awaken a mark of the ancestral dragon? Nietion's mark of the ancestral dragon's aura was stronger than his. What was going on? These questions were like riddles pressing on Zhu Shi's heart, making him very uneasy. He could not imagine that there was a mark of the ancestral dragon stronger than his mark of frozen end. Zhu Shi, if my speculations are correct, you're a member of the Grand Voodoo Frozen End bloodline, right? Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly as he sent a voice transmission to Zhu Shi. Zhu Shi had the mark of the ancestral dragon in his body, so he must be a dragon martial practitioner of the 4 great ancestral dragons. The 4 great ancestral dragons: 9 Incandle Dragon, 7 Fiend Abyssal Dragon, 5 Yang Wing Dragon, and Grand Shaman Frozen End. Among them, Nietion had seen Xian Xie, who had the body of the Nether Dragon. His own mark of the ancestral dragon was a combination of the Candle Dragon and the Winged Dragon. Zhu Shi's mark of the ancestral dragon was different from the Nether Dragon, the Candle Dragon, and the Winged Dragon. Therefore, Zhu Shi could only be a mark of Frozen End, a martial practitioner of the Grand Shaman Frozen End bloodline. You know of the Grand Shaman Frozen End? Zhu Shi's eyes trembled, and his voice changed. The 4 great ancestral dragons had disappeared for a long time. Even among the dragon martial practitioners, there were very few who knew of the 4 great ancestral dragons. How could Zhu Shi not be surprised that Nietion, a non-dragon, could speak of the Grand Shaman Frozen End? It seems that you really are a member of the Grand Shaman Frozen End bloodline. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Nietion's mouth as he said, "You've already awakened 3 of the 9 marks of the ancestral dragon within you. No wonder you're so powerful. I've lost this battle." Zhu Shi's eyes trembled, and he was extremely shocked. It seemed like he wasn't the only one who saw Nietion's dragon's vein. Nietion had also seen his dragon's vein. "Who exactly are you?" Zhu Shi's eyes darkened as he asked coldly. He couldn't figure out why an outsider would know so much about the 4 great ancestor dragons. Nietion smiled faintly and said calmly, "I only obtained the dragon vein by chance, and was lucky enough to awaken the mark of the ancestral dragon with the help of a senior from the 7 Fiend Abyssal Dragon tribe." He did not mention anything about the dragon shepherds. Zhu Shi probably did not know much about them. 7 Slaughter Abyssal Dragon. Zhu Shi's eyes trembled slightly as he said in shock, "There are still people in the Abyssal Dragon tribe." "Of course." Nietion laughed and said, "Not only are there people from the Nether Dragon clan, but I've also personally seen a warrior with the body of the Nether Dragon. He also has 9 marks of the ancestral dragon." This, Zhu Shi's eyes trembled. He was momentarily speechless. He originally thought that he was the last person from the 4 great ancestor dragon tribes. He did not expect that there were still people from the 7 Fiend Abyssal Dragon tribe. After a while, Zhu Shi calmed down and asked Nietion, "What's your name?" Nietion replied faintly, "Nietion, if you had the same cultivation level as me, you would be my opponent," Zhu Shi said Nietion coldly. Nietion smiled faintly and did not deny it. Zhu Shi's words were clear. Nietion was still too weak and was not worthy of being his opponent. But when these words fell into the ears of the crowd, it was already very shocking. One must know that Xiao Wanjie was not even qualified to die in Zhu Shi's hands, let alone be his opponent. The fact that Zhu Shi could say such words to Nietion showed how much he valued Nietion. At this moment, everyone had a new understanding of Nietion, and a hint of fear could be seen in their eyes as they looked at him. "Nietion, I look forward to the day when you grow up. At that time, we will have another fierce battle." Zhu Shi's eyes were as sharp as swords as he said loudly, "I hope that you won't make me wait too long for that day. The real battle between you and me will come very soon." Nietion smiled faintly. His calm face was filled with strong confidence. Since he had lost to Zhu Shi would become the pending martial leader. Nietion had to become the martial leader of the 5 academies this time. Therefore, there would definitely be a huge battle between him and Zhu Shi. The exchange just now allowed Nietion to truly witness how terrifying Zhu Shi was. If he could make it to the last step and have a chance to fight against Zhu Shi, it would really be a battle of life and death. Zhu Shi could feel the confidence in Nietion's eyes. He could not help but be moved. Vaguely, he had a hunch that perhaps Nietian would be the one to emerge from the hidden dragon battle and fight against him. However, in the next moment, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. He felt that it was unlikely. Although Nietian's sword just now had exceeded his expectations, that was all there was to it. He even felt that Nietian's battle strength was far from Xiao Wanjie's and the others. It was impossible for Nietian to fight his way out of the encirclement of experts. Then, Nietian's figure moved, and he retreated. Everyone's eyes trembled. They seemed very shocked. Although Nietian was defeated in this battle, it was still honorable. Next, Zhu Shi challenged another two martial artists. However, it was a pity that both of them directly admitted defeat. Zhu Shi successfully became the martial leader and stood at the peak of the hidden dragon battle. Next, he only needed to wait for the person who challenged him to appear. After a long time, the commotion caused by Zhu Shi finally calmed down. After a while, the third stage of the hidden dragon battle, the group round-robin battle, officially began. Even though Nietian had lost a match to Zhu Shi, that match had nothing to do with the round-robin matches. Next, he still had 8 battles. As long as his points were ranked in the top 16 among the 300 martial artists, he could advance to the 4th stage of the hidden dragon battle. Very soon, Nietian welcomed his first battle. His figure moved and directly came to the arena. He stood there like a strange peak. Almost at the same time, a figure with a terrifying aura appeared. Like a huge mountain, the surrounding void trembled from the pressure. When Nietian saw the person in front of him clearly, he could not help but tremble and exclaim in surprise. Chapter 4069. The king's death stood in the air. The saber chi around his body was like a raging wave that enveloped the entire arena. Nietian felt the pressure of the saber chi in the air and could not help but shudder. He had seen the battle between the king's death and Yu Jingchen not long ago. But now that he felt the king's saber chi up close, he finally understood how powerful this person was. More importantly, the king's death's eyes were filled with murderous intent. It was obvious that he was prepared and would not show any mercy. Nietian, I'm afraid this is going to be a tough battle, Fat Cat said, unable to hide her worry. Along the way, the opponents that Nietian had met were not strong. Occasionally, he would encounter a few strong opponents, but he would be able to deal with them skillfully. For example, the Sky Maiden and Yu Jingchen. But against the king's death, it was completely different. The king's death hated swordsmen. He was ruthless and would not give Nietian any chance. Since I can't hide, I'll fight to the best of my abilities, Nietian said with a smile. He wanted to reach the end of the hidden dragon battle. A battle was unavoidable. It was just that this battle was coming a little too early. At this time, the crowd looked at the two figures on the arena and could not help but start discussing. The king's death is going against this guy. This is going to be interesting. This guy called Nietian is really unlucky. He actually encountered the king's death. The king's death hates swordsmen the most. He has always killed one on sight. This time, Nietian is probably in danger. The crowd's eyes were burning with excitement, as if they were anticipating something. Needless to say, the fame of the king Bestowal Warrior went without saying. After his battle with Zhu Shi, Nietian's name had also spread. But in the eyes of the crowd, Nietian and the king's death were not on the same level at all. Many people felt that the king's death had the ability to kill Nietian in one move. After all, the difference in cultivation between the two was too great. Yu Jingchen looked at Nietian with a gloomy face. He was very worried. The king's death was his destined enemy. He did not expect that Nietian would encounter it first. Boom! At that moment, King Shang, who was on the arena, trembled. Instantly, a boundless amount of saber chi spread out, forming an invisible barrier in the air, pressing down. Nietian's eyes trembled slightly, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. King Confirmant's saber chi was ferocious and tyrannical, forceful and unparalleled, making him feel even more pressure. Die! In the next instant, King Shang let out a low roar as he slashed Ghost Splitter through the air. Instantly, a gigantic shadow of a saber appeared, causing the surrounding space to tremble as a thunderous sound rang out, as though it was unable to withstand the pressure. Boom! Then, the shadow of the saber fell like a mountain, pressing down on Nietion. Nietion's eyes turned cold as he activated the soul of the sky within his body. Sharp sword chi gushed out like a hurricane. Bang! In the void, the sword's shadow was like a raging dragon, clashing head-on with the huge saber shadow. Suddenly, a muffled explosion was heard, and heaven and earth trembled. Billowing waves of saber and sword chi appeared, spreading wildly in all directions. Nietion's body trembled slightly, and then he retreated 1,000 meters away. When he stabilized himself, blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. His wrist was trembling, and he could barely hold his sword. His strength is much more terrifying than I imagined. Nietion's eyes trembled slightly as he thought to himself. King Shang's saber chi was ferocious and tyrannical, and his strength was far above Nietion's. King Shang stood coldly in the air like a mountain. He looked at Nietion, and his eyes darkened slightly, as though he was very surprised. That slash just now, although it wasn't his full strength, it was enough to instantly kill a first-level heavenly tribulation martial artist. As for Nietion, he only had the strength of a second-level heavenly tribulation martial artist, and yet he didn't die. It was too strange. Your martial body far surpasses other martial artists of the same level, King Shang said cold. It seems like I have underestimated you. Your strength is indeed above mine, but the outcome of this battle is unknown. Nietion's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he replied coldly. You are indeed different from other martial artists, but your strength is too weak. King Shang sneered. Suddenly, the saber chi around his body became even more terrifying, and the surging aura was like a tsunami, shaking the heavens and earth. Nietion's eyes darkened slightly. Under the attack of King Shang's saber chi, he couldn't even stand stably. One slash, it's over. In the next moment, King Shang's eyes flashed coldly, and he used Ghost Crack again. In the air, 3 saber shadows appeared, each more terrifying and violent than the last, as though they were going to crush everything. Nietion's eyes darkened slightly, and the sword in the sky pierced towards the sky. Instantly, the shadow of the sword shot up into the sky. Boom! 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 Immediately, a terrifying explosion sounded out in the sky, and the heavens and earth shook. The saber and sword waves were like giant waves, spreading in all directions, as though they were going to devour everything. Nietion retreated madly. Under the impact of the raging waves, numerous bloody wounds appeared on his body, and he was instantly drenched in blood. But at the last moment, he managed to stabilize himself. He stood in the sky like a towering mountain, unshakable. The crowd was stunned by the scene in the sky. Their eyes trembled uncontrollably, and the shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. They obviously didn't expect Nietion to be so stubborn. With his strength, he was able to block 2 slashes from King Shang. That was unbelievable. Interesting. King Shang's body was filled with murderous intent, and he stood in the sky like a god of death, looking down on everything. One had to admit that Nietion's strength had exceeded his expectations, and he was shocked. Next, King Shang attacked again. Terrifying saber shadows sliced through the sky, pressing down on Nietion. Even though Nietion had fought back with all his might, the overwhelming power was simply too much for him to bear. His silhouette was like a kite with its string cut as he was sent flying. His entire body was covered in blood, as though he had just walked out from a river of blood. Nietion, how many more slashes can you take? King Shang's eyes flashed with coldness. The saber chi around his body was incomparably violent, as though he was about to go crazy. Even with his strength, he couldn't kill Nietion after several slashes. To him, this was a humiliation. We haven't decided who will win yet. You're too arrogant. Tianling retorted coldly. A strange light flashed in his eyes, as though he was trying to provoke King Shang. You're courting death. King Shang was instantly enraged. He roared in a low voice, and his silhouette moved again. The splitting ghost blade emitted a blinding saber light, and a terrifying saber shadow appeared, as though it could tear the heavens apart. It slashed down towards Nie Tian. Chapter 47. Nie Tianling stood in the air, his eyes fixed on the saber descending from the sky. His face was not one of fear, but of excitement. The King Shang's strength was truly terrifying. Under the saber, that all-devouring aura caused people to tremble in fear. But at this moment, Nie Tian was like a boulder in the midst of a raging storm. No matter how the waves howled, he would not fall. The King Shang stared coldly at Nie Tian, a malevolent smile on his face. It was as though he could already see the scene of Nie Tian being killed. Killing a swordsman, especially a swordsman recognized by Zhu Shi, gave him a perverse sense of satisfaction. The eyes of the crowd trembled as they stared at the unyielding figure, evidently anticipating something. Black tortoise astral soul appear. At this moment, just as the gigantic saber was about to descend, Nie Tian's body trembled slightly as he spoke in a low voice. Instantly, boundless starlight gushed out, forming a gigantic black tortoise outside his body. Bang! In the next instant, the saber descended, causing a muffled sound to echo in the air. The black tortoise trembled violently, forcibly blocking the terrifying saber. This! The eyes of the crowd trembled violently as they exclaimed in shock. Evidently, they did not dare to believe the scene before them. Who would have thought that Nie Tian would actually be able to block such a powerful saber strike? No one knew exactly what kind of power the black tortoise that Nie Tian had released contained. That aura was similar to Nie Tian's. It seemed to be some kind of bloodline power, but this bloodline power was too strange. How can this be? High up in the air, the King Shang could not help but exclaim in shock. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Nie Tian would actually be able to release such a terrifying power in an instant. Azure Dragon Astral Soul appear. In the next moment, the corners of Nie Tian's mouth curled up into a cold smile as he spoke in a deep voice. In an instant, starlight flowed in all directions, and the illusory image of the Azure Dragon appeared, resonating with the black tortoise star soul. Next, the void trembled, and the gigantic saber image actually shattered. Azure Dragon, Black Tortoise, one for attack, one for defense. Even a powerful King Shang would not be able to withstand such an attack. Huh? The King Shang was stunned by the scene before him as he frantically retreated. The fact that Nie Tian had launched a counterattack, even though he was seriously injured, was simply beyond their expectations. Human slaughter, astral soul, appear. In the next moment, Nie Tian stepped onto the Azure Dragon's back and charged forward. He thrust out his palm, and a beam of starlight appeared. It was as dazzling as the sun, and it shone with boundless radiance, as if it could annihilate everything in its path. Just the Azure Dragon and Black Tortoise astral souls were far from sufficient to deal with a king conferral. Nie Tian directly used the human slaughter astral soul. His purpose was to directly defeat the King Shang. This power The sudden scene caused the King Shang's eyes to tremble as he screamed. He could feel the suppressive might gushing towards him. That kind of killing intent caused him to feel despair. He wanted to retaliate, but sadly, it was already too late. Boom! The human slaughter astral soul whistled out, directly blasting towards King Shang. King Shang hurriedly circulated his saber chi to defend himself, but it was too weak. His entire person was flung through the air, leaving behind a trail of blood in the air. Nie Tian stepped out, resembling a deity descending from the heavens, coldly standing in the air above the battle stage. Such a shocking scene caused the eyes of the spectators to tremble as they were speechless. Who would have thought that in the face of certain death, Nie Tian would actually be able to explode forth with such terrifying strength, directly achieving such a shocking reversal? At this moment, even the judge in the air was completely dumbfounded. His eyes trembled and his lips twitched uncontrollably, as though he wanted to say something, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find the words to say. And on the other side, King Shang's silhouette came to a halt. On his chest, there was a wound so deep that his bones could be seen. His entire body was dripping with blood, and the hand he used to hold Ghost Rend was trembling slightly. His eyes were incomparably cold, and his entire person was like an enraged beast, but he didn't know how to vent his anger. Earlier, Nietion's counterattack didn't cause any fatal damage to him, but he was still sent flying out of the battle stage. When a cultivator was sent flying out of the battle stage, it meant that he had been defeated. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that Nietion would be so terrifying, able to unleash such terrifying strength. If he had known that this would happen, he would have used the blood spiritual force within Ghost Rend. He definitely wouldn't have given Nietion any chance at all. But now he had been defeated. He had been defeated by a trash that he didn't even want to spare a glance at. King Shang, you've lost. At this moment, Tianling, who was high up in the air, coldly spoke. His face was filled with arrogance, and his entire person was as sharp as a sword. King Shang's face was downcast, and he didn't reply. Nietion smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. His silhouette flashed, and he directly left the battle stage. Although he had won this battle, he had paid a huge price. Firstly, his injuries weren't light. Secondly, he had used 3 astral souls, and he wasn't even able to deal a fatal blow to King Shang. One couldn't help but admit that King Shang's strength was indeed terrifying. The reason why Nietion could win this battle was partly because of his own strength, and partly because King Shang was too arrogant. If King Shang had directly used the blood spiritual force, perhaps Nietion wouldn't even have had a chance to retaliate. However, it was useless to say all this now. In the end, Nietion still won this battle. Boss, how are you feeling? Xie Kuang appeared the moment Nietion landed, and he asked worriedly. I'm fine. Nietion smiled faintly. The blood on his body had already been cleansed, and his wounds were also slowly healing. However, his face was still somewhat pale. That fellow Saber Chi is really strong. Even my lightning force might not be able to suppress him. Xie Kuang glanced at King Shang from afar, and he said with lingering fear in his heart, luckily, he was careless. If he had used his full strength, this battle would really be over. My strength is still too weak. Nietion smiled bitterly, a look of helplessness on his face. If he had the same cultivation base as King Shang, things wouldn't have been so difficult. Luckily, he had some time to rest, and he could temporarily recover his martial physique. Next, Nietion didn't pay attention to the other battles, but focused on recovering from his injuries. Roughly half an hour later, he stood up again. His aura had recovered by about 70% to 80%, and his pale complexion had turned for the better. Chapter 4071. It's the two of them. When Nietion saw the 2 figures high up in the sky, he couldn't help but tremble, and worry appeared on his face. Yu Jingchen had actually encountered Xiao Wanjie. This battle was going to be dangerous. Yu Jingchen was ranked 9th on the Hidden Sky list, so there was no doubt about his strength. However, his opponent was the devil son of the demon race, who was ranked 3rd on the Hidden Sky list. The difference in strength in this battle was still huge. At this moment, the people around the arena looked at the 2 people in the sky with heated expressions. They were obviously looking forward to the battle. Xiao Wanjie and Yu Jingchen, the devil son of the demon race, and the number 1 sword genius of the Heaven Martial Group. This battle is really exciting. Although they are both ranked in the top 10 on the Hidden Sky list, Xiao Wanjie is ranked 3rd. I'm afraid he is much stronger than Yu Jingchen. I hope Yu Jingchen can last a little longer. Yu Jingchen is the number 1 sword genius, but I think his strength is even weaker than that Nietion. Everyone was discussing this. It was obvious that Xiao Wanjie had the absolute advantage in this battle. Even if Xiao Wanjie couldn't crush Yu Jingchen, he wasn't far from it. Yu Jingchen. At this moment, Xiao Wanjie stood coldly in the sky. His eyes were filled with contempt as he said loudly, "You're lucky. I don't want to kill anyone today, so you should just admit defeat. Admit defeat? The corner of Yu Jingqian's mouth twitched. His eyes were filled with a strange light as he said coldly, "Your Highness, you're too arrogant." "Oomph," Xiao Wanjie sneered. His eyes were filled with coldness as he said, "Yu Jingqian, since you're looking for death, don't blame me for this." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, his body trembled. Suddenly, a huge wave of ghost chi shot up into the sky. The terrifying aura rushed into the surrounding void, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Everyone's eyes trembled as they retreated. Xiao Wanjie was not only extremely powerful, but he was also known for being cruel and bloodthirsty. Once he went berserk, it was not a joke. Yu Jingqian could feel the ghost chi pressing down on him. His body moved slightly as he took a step forward. The unfettered sword on his back was unsheathed, and a sharp sword chi shot out, tearing apart the terrifying ghost chi. Following that, his entire body surged with sword chi, which enveloped his entire body and prevented the ghost chi from approaching. His entire person was as imposing as a god. Interesting. Xiao Wanjie felt the fluctuation of the ghost energy in the air. His eyes narrowed and a cold smile appeared on his face. Devil, tribulation, power strangle. In the next moment, he let out a low roar and the aura in his body surged crazily. Boundless ghost chi surged violently like a storm, rushing out to attack Yu Jingqian. Yu Jingqian's eyes darkened as he streaked across the void. His sword shadows surged forward to resist the ghost chi storm. However, the strangling power in the void was too much for him to bear. His figure kept retreating. "You dare to be so insolent in front of me with only this much strength? What a joke." Xiao Wanjie laughed coldly and sent out a palm strike. Instantly, an even more terrifying ghostly chi appeared. A terrifying demonic palm appeared in the void and pressed towards Yu Jingqian. Everyone's eyes widened and they gasped in shock. If this palm strike landed, Yu Jingqian would not be able to turn the situation around. "Be careful." Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly, and he couldn't help but scream. Xiao Wanjie's aura was too strong. Could Yu Jingqian withstand it? 9 extremes, 1,000 mountains. At this critical moment, Yu Jingqian let out a low roar and swung his unfettered sword. Instantly, a huge sword-intense soared into the sky. Sword shadows appeared like thousands of strange mountains, shaking the heavens and earth. Boom! Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, 2 terrifying forces collided with each other. Heaven and earth trembled, and a violent force surged out like a wild beast, wreaking havoc in the void. Yu Jingqian saw the sword shadows shattering one after another. Under the impact of the terrifying force, he started to retreat continuously. When he finally stabilized his body with great difficulty, his entire body was already dripping with fresh blood. Several wounds were extremely deep, and one could actually see the eerie white bones. The strangest thing was that those wounds were dirty and black, as if he had been poisoned. Xiao Wanjie cultivated the 10,000 Ghosts immortal technique. His aura was not only vigorous and violent, but also contained the terrifying power of 10,000 Ghost calamity, which was extremely harmful to a martialist's martial body. Yu Jingqian's advantage lay in his sword principle. His martial body wasn't strong to begin with, so he couldn't withstand the impact of the 10,000 Ghost calamity. Yu Jingqian, you're the #1 sword prodigy of the Heaven Martial Group, but it turns out that you don't live up to your name. You're just an idiot. In the sky, Xiao Wanjie laughed maniacally and said, "It's not too late for you to admit defeat. If I'm happy, I might even spare your worthless life." Xiao Wanjie, this battle isn't over yet. It's too early for you to be happy. Yu Jingqian's eyes trembled slightly. At this moment, he wasn't just representing himself, but the dignity of the entire Heaven Martial Group. He could lose, but he could never admit defeat. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Jingqian took a step forward. Suddenly, a huge sword aura appeared, like a wild dragon soaring into the sky, causing the surrounding space to shake. What a strong sword aura! Everyone could feel the fluctuations in the void, and they couldn't help but tremble in shock. Who would have thought that Yu Jingchen would be able to explode with such a terrifying sword aura, even though he was seriously injured? Is he going to use Jingchen's last move? Nie Tian's eyes darkened slightly, and his expression changed. When he fought with Yu Jingchen previously, he knew that Yu Jingchen had not used his last move. When Yu Jingchen fought with King Shang, he also wanted to use his last move, but he was stopped by Zhou Yu. At this moment, facing the violent Xiao Wanjie, he was finally going to use his last move. However, Nie Tian was very worried at this moment. Even if Yu Jingchen used his last move, would he be able to resist Xiao Wanjie? So, he still has a hidden move. Interesting. Xiao Wanjie looked at Yu Jingchen, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Then, he took a step forward, and the endless ghost energy around his body condensed into a huge black lotus behind him. This black lotus again. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and his heart sank. That black lotus should be Xiao Wanjie's trump card. Previously, when Xiao Wanjie fought against the Holy Maiden of Heaven, and when he fought against Zhu Shi, he had used the black lotus. Now that he used the black lotus again, it was obvious that Xiao Wanjie wanted to kill. Chapter 4072. Boom, boom. High up in the sky, two powerful forces clashed against each other. It was as though two ancient beasts were clashing against each other, causing the void to tremble. Everyone's eyes were filled with excitement as they witnessed the clash of the strongest forces. Boom. In the next instant, the sword shadow and the gigantic beast collided with each other. A muffled sound rang out, and it was as though the heavens and earth were about to collapse, following which a terrifying force spread out in all directions. It was as though it wanted to engulf everything in its path. The crowd that was more than 100,000 meters away was affected by the impact, and they were forced to retreat continuously. Such a terrifying force was comparable to the battle between Xiao Wanjie and Zhu Shi. Bang, bang, bang. In the void, the sound of explosions rang out continuously. Terrifying shockwaves engulfed the entire sky above the battle arena. Xiao Wanjie and Yu Jingchen's figures were completely engulfed by the shockwaves. Who won? Everyone's eyes trembled as they wondered what the outcome of this battle would be. Boom! Right at this moment, a muffled sound rang out in the chaotic void, following which a blood-colored figure flew out and landed heavily on the ground. It's Yu Jingchen. Everyone's eyes widened as they saw the figure, and they exclaimed in shock. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he saw a blood-soaked face. Damn it, he exclaimed, following which his figure moved and he flew over. At this moment, Yu Jingchen's figure suddenly froze, and he stood upright in the void. His entire body was dripping with blood, and his body trembled uncontrollably. He was like a leaf in the wind that was about to wither away at any moment. However, he still stood his ground. His spine was straight like an unyielding sword. In the end, he still lost. Compared to Xiao Wanjie, his strength was indeed too weak. Die for me. Right at this moment, a loud roar rang out in the sky, following which a figure swooped down from the sky and struck out with his palm. The palm shadow was like a mountain as it pressed down on Yu Jingchen. This shocking scene caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air as their eyes widened in shock. Xiao Wanjie had already knocked Yu Jingchen off the stage and heavily injured him, but he still didn't let him off. He actually wanted to kill him. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he hovered in midair. The sky sword appeared in his hand. As he was about to swing it forward, he suddenly felt a strange force approaching him like a giant net. His expression changed, and he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. In the next moment, he noticed that the power had sealed the space around him. Damn it! The sudden change infuriated Nie Tian. With a low roar, the dragon chi in his body surged and broke through the invisible force in the void. However, it was already too late for him to make a move. Boom! The terrifying palm shadow was like a collapsing mountain as it pressed towards Yu Jingchen. Once it landed, there would definitely be no flesh left. Bang! At the moment of life and death, A bolt of lightning appeared and smashed the palm shadow into pieces. Then, a figure appeared and landed beside Yu Jingqian. That was close. Nie Tian steadied himself. When he saw that the person standing beside Yu Jingqian was Xie Tianquang, his tensed face relaxed a little. However, in the next moment, he turned around abruptly and locked his gaze on a figure. It was the young master of the Myriad Note Demon Palace, Gong Yuzigi. Just now, Gong Yuzigi had blocked Nie Tian's attack. The thrilling scene caused everyone's eyes to tremble. When they recovered from their shock, they were speechless. At this moment, they looked at the sky with even more fervent expressions. Although Yu Jingqian had lost, Nie Tian, Xie Tianquang, Gong Yuzigi, and the others stood up. With the addition of Xiao Wanjie, the battle between the top four made the scene even more exciting than before. Nie Tian, this isn't your battle. It's best if you don't interfere. Gong Yuzigi's eyes darkened as he looked at Nie Tian from afar. Nie Tian's face was gloomy. He ignored Gong Yuzigi and moved to Yu Jingqian's side. Just now, Yu Jingqian had already left the stage, so his battle with Xiao Wanjie had already ended. It was Xiao Wanjie who was too murderous and insisted on killing him. Nie Tian. Yu Jingqian's eyes trembled as he called out with difficulty. In the next moment, he actually fainted. Nie Tian frowned. When he sensed Yu Jingqian's aura, his expression changed instantly. Yu Jingqian's 9 yuan meridians were actually shattered. At this moment, Yu Jingqian's yuan meridians were all crippled. Damn it! Nie Tian roared and looked at Xiao Wanjie with a cold expression. Then, he transferred waves of yuan qi to Yu Jingqian to help him stabilize his aura. Brat, you dare to attack me? You're courting death. At this moment, Xiao Wanjie's eyes were filled with killing intent. He roared and charged towards Nie Tian, Xie Tianquang, and the others. Scram! Xie Tianquang's expression was dark. Like a wild beast, he let out a violent roar. Boundless lightning energy appeared and surged towards the clouds. Bang! In the next instant, Xiao Wanjie was sent flying before he could even react. It was obvious that he didn't understand Xie Tianquang's strength, which was why he attacked carelessly. How is this possible? Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them and exclaimed in unison. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't believe that Xie Tianquang could send Xiao Wanjie flying with a casual wave of his hand. Who is Xie Tianquang? How could he be so strong? Your Highness, are you all right? High up in the sky, Gong Yuzi returned to Xiao Wanjie's side and asked solemnly. Kill them. Xiao Wanjie's eyes were filled with killing intent. The ghost energy around his body instantly became violent. Gong Yuzi frowned, and his expression was a little dark. However, he still nodded his head. High up in the sky, the judge watched coldly and had no intention of interfering. Xiao Wanjie and Gong Yuzi's identities were special, and they weren't to be trifled with. It was better for him not to touch this hot potato. Boom! Boom! Following which, Xiao Wanjie and Gong Yuzi took a step forward at the same time and pressed down like two mountains. Enough! But right at this moment, a low voice sounded and a familiar figure appeared, blocking Xiao Wanjie and Gong Yuzi. It was Mori Shire. Xiao Wanjie and Gong Yuzi's bodies froze. When they saw the person in front of them, their expressions changed, and they didn't dare to approach. Back off, Mori Shire said in a cold voice. His figure flashed and appeared beside Nie Tian and the others. Xiao Wanjie and Gong Yuzi's expressions were incomparably gloomy. They didn't dare to go against Mori Shire's words and finally backed off. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them, and the way they looked at Mori Shire became extremely strange. Who exactly was Mori Shire? How could he make the Devil Race's Devil Son and Devil Palace's young lord obey his every order? How is he? Mori Shire came to Nie Tian's side and asked with a gloomy expression.